Welcome everybody to another exciting episode of the Crowdsourced Politics Weekly News Roundup. I am the host and moderator of the Crowdsourced Politics podcast, Cypher, and we have a ton of news that we have to get covered today, but we also got a special treat for you today. We are going to be live on the fucking Wild. Hold on. What was the name of his cast again? Big Buckin', I think is what it's called. Yeah, Big Buckin' Empire podcast today, starting at roughly about 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're going to cut this short, go over to KOE Nation's YouTube or podcast, and we're going to be a guest over there, and we'll be simul streaming with him. So that's what we're doing today. Now we have for you a lot of new announcements. So first up, we have a new episode of Cypher State, and you can get that on YouTube, link coming to you now. This, we covered the French parliamentary elections that just happened over the last 2 weeks, covering everything that was French politics from kind of the founding of Macron's party to the present day, and explaining what it means for Europe, France, and the world as a whole. We also have a new podcast exclusive episode. And what I mean by podcast exclusive means this is not on YouTube, so you have to get it at a podcast streaming service. And that is a series of interviews with Trump supporters at the American Freedom Tour rally that happened in Austin, Texas on May 14th. You can get that at wherever you get your podcast, but we just dropped the Spotify link for you. Now, we also have another podcast that we do called Praxis Run. We had an interview with Kay Fellows last month, and we were looking for more guests to interview, more activists to interview across the political spectrum, minus Nazis, and to understand them a bit better and to find out why they do what they do and what kind of insights we can gain from that. So that is also a thing that you should be on the lookout for. And we have another upcoming podcast episode. We did this live here on Twitch and on YouTube last Tuesday. We are currently producing the episode, which means it should be released sometime next week, probably by Tuesday, right after the 4th of July, and right before I go on vacation to South Korea. So that episode dealt with immigration, the border, and economics. We interviewed two immigration attorneys, Nate Dallin, who a lot of you are familiar with, and Jenny Hobbs, a member of my community from Facebook. Both of them are immigration attorneys. Nate Dallin deals with expulsions and asylum cases, and Jenny Hobbs deals with the employment side of immigration, so H-1B visas, worker status, temporary worker status, etc. So it's a very informative podcast, and we're producing that, like I said, and it should be up for your enjoyment here by Tuesday on YouTube and on everywhere you get a podcast at. So that is what we have news-wise about us. So let's go ahead and get started with the show, and we'll be doing it. Oops, that was the wrong script. All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the news roundup. We have a lot of news for you, so we're going to hit the road running here with updates about Russia's war in Ukraine. So the Russian war on Ukraine has entered its 5th month, and we're going to begin with updates therein. Now, The Guardian has reported that Ukrainian forces say they have pushed Russian forces from Snake Island, a strategic Black Sea landmass off the southern coast near the city of Odessa. Ukraine's reported recapture of the island weakens any potential plans Russia may have for a future land attack on that stretch of coastline. Russia already controls a large swath of Ukraine's Black Sea coast, plus the Crimean Peninsula and the entire Sea of Azov. Holding Snake Island completed an effective blockade of Odessa and meant exports of the vast majority of Ukraine's grain were impossible. A look on the map, which we will turn to now. Hopefully it's on the screen now. Yep, it's on the screen. All right. So a look on the map shows that Russian controls of the island represented a threat to NATO members Romania. Now, it is not just strategically significant, this area is also rich in reserves of petroleum and natural gas. Russia's Minister of Defense claims it had completed its assigned task and was tactically withdrawing to allow for grain exports from Ukraine's Black Sea port. Ukraine said it had forced Russian troops to flee overnight. So the war of propaganda, the war of messaging, is still raging, of course. Quote, during the night, as a result of successful military operation with our missile and artillery units on Snake Island, the enemy hastily evacuated the remnants of the garrison in 2 speedboats and probably left the island, Ukrainian military officials said to The Guardian. This is not just a symbolic victory for Ukraine, though. It is also a strategic success. For Russia, this is both a setback and an embarrassing defeat. Snake Island was made famous when Russia first captured it back in February. A Ukrainian soldier posted on the island told an attacking Russian ship to go fuck yourself, which has become one of the most popular Ukrainian slogans of resistance since the invasion began. Now, NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has said Sweden and Finland are expected to formally sign the NATO accession protocol on Tuesday. Following a NATO summit in Madrid, Stoltenberg said leaders had decided to support Kyiv to make sure Ukraine prevails as an independent southern state in Europe. Putin commented on Wednesday that Sweden and Finland could join NATO if they wished, but warned that Russia would, quote, respond in kind if either country played host to alliance military forces or infrastructure. Now, Greece is also willing to provide ships to help export grain from Ukraine's Black Sea ports that have been blocked by Russia, Stoltenberg has added. Now, President Zelensky has announced the end of diplomatic ties between Ukraine and Syria after the Russian ally recognized the independence of eastern Ukraine's 2 self-proclaimed republics in Donetsk and Luhansk. Quote, there will no longer be relations between Ukraine and Syria, Zelensky said, adding that the sanctions pressures against Syria, quote, will be even greater. Food insecurity, though, is growing in Africa and other nations and places due to Russia's stoppage of grain and other products coming out of Ukraine. On that front, the Group of 7 nations on Tuesday pledged to spend roughly $4.5 billion to address a global food crisis fueled by the Russians' invasion. The commitment came as leaders of the world's major developed economies, including President Joe Biden, wrapped up a 3-day summit in Germany focused on supporting Kyiv and combating Moscow. Of the total committed by the G7, the US will commit $2.76 billion, which will come from the Ukraine's aid package passed by Congress earlier this year, a senior US administration official had said. The funding will support efforts in more than 47 countries and regional organizations. Now, one of the things that people might be a little about with this is that there was money allocated to Ukraine, but not just for Ukraine's military efforts. Money that was allocated to the State Department, USAID, Department of Defense to use as it needed or until exhausted to combat Russian influence and might from this, and also prevent any of the assured fallout from the invasion from causing world contagion problems, essentially. And so that's why some of this money is going to be directed towards this food effort. So that is what we have for Ukraine. Now, in other news dealing with the Ukrainian and Russian war, is Brittany Griner has started her trial in Russia. So more than 4 months ago, after her arrest in Russia, Brittany Griner finally has a trial date. The fate of the WNBA star and Houston native will be decided later this week. Her trial will begin tomorrow. As you might remember, Griner, a center for the Phoenix Mercury, played in Russia during the WNBA's postseason. She was arrested at an airport near Moscow in February and accused of having vape cartridges containing cannabis oil in her luggage. Last month, the U.S. Department classified Griner as wrongfully detained and shifted oversight of her case to its special presidential envoy for hostage affairs, effectively the U.S. government's chief negotiator. Oh, thanks, Def for Certainty, for the raid, bro. Appreciate that. Hold up. We got to go back over to the solo part and turn on these alerts, bro. Let's replay that. Oh, I'll have it open. Well, we'll continue on and I'll thank everybody in a minute. Everything gets up. So, quote, I would strongly disagree with, hold on, I'm sorry. So last month, the U.S. Department classified Griner as wrongfully detained and shifted oversight of her case to its special presidential envoy for hostage affairs, effectively the U.S. government's chief negotiator. Quote, I would strongly disagree with that. We cannot call her a hostage. She violated Russian law, and now she is being prosecuted, Russia Press Secretary Dmitry Peskov told NBC News last week. Last week, more than 40 organizations signed a letter urging President Biden and Vice President Harris to make a deal to bring Griner home. Brian Whitmore, an adjunct professor of the University of Texas at Arlington and an expert on Russian affairs, says this is a deal that won't happen unless Russia gets what it wants. Quote, my understanding of what the Russians want of this is they want Victor Bout, Whitmore said. So for those that may not know, Victor Bout is an international arms dealer and was convicted in 2011 in New York of terrorism crimes, including conspiring to kill Americans. And if you have not seen the movie, if you know about the movie rather, he is the lead antagonist or protagonist, I guess, depending on your view, of Lord of War. That's the movie that starred Nicolas Cage. Now, he's serving a 25-year sentence at a federal prison in Illinois. Bout's attorney reportedly told the TASS Russian news agency he thinks the exchange is imminent. Now, NBC News hasn't confirmed the report, though. Quote, it's very transactional. It's a very high value hostage. To us, this is an American citizen and a great athlete. To them, it's a chip to be traded, Whitmore had said. Now, Griner is charged with large-scale transportation of drugs. Bullshit charge, 100%. And according to the Associated Press, fewer than 1% of defendants in Russia criminal cases are ever acquitted. And unlike in the US, acquittals can't be overturned. So we have that. Now, again, thank you everybody for the raid from Death of Certainty. It's great to have you all with us. Thank you so much. For whatever reason, my alerts aren't working terribly well. Let's go ahead and get that situated here. Appreciate it. Stabby Sticks. Great. Thank you. And everybody, if you're watching this and you're not from Death of Certainty stream, go ahead and please go ahead and give Death of Certainty a follow. And if I could find him on my thing. Or do that. We'll do shout out. Great to have you here, buddy. Appreciate the raid. Appreciate the follows. So please go ahead and check out Death of Certainty at Death of Certainty on Twitch. And then where is that? There it is. All right. And all right. But we need to continue on the news, and I will be sure to get your questions in as they come. All right. So what else do we have coming out of Russia? Well, we have NATO pledging biggest defense overhaul since the Cold War. And this is a very important thing to talk about. So let's go ahead and get it started. So under pressure to find new ways to confront Russia, President Biden and his NATO allies on Wednesday announced a historic surge of forces along Europe's eastern flank. The alliance plans to build a rapid reaction force of 300,000 troops to defend its territory. A rapid reaction force means exactly what it says. It's a group of people that are on notice to deploy and react at a moment's notice. And this is a huge amount of troops that will be able to be activated within hours instead of days that would normally take to react to a evasion or attack or anything else. Now, the force is intended to be deployable within 15 days. That's this force that will make up the reaction force is going to deploy within 15 days. So the plan aims to muster 100,000 troops within 10 days, an additional 200,000 troops within 30 days. The pledge represents a 650% increase from the 40,000 troops NATO currently has in its response force. The new U.S. military deployment includes the following: a permanent headquarters for U.S. 5th Army Corps in Poland, a move that Putin has long resisted, as well as an additional rotational combat brigades to Romania, enhanced rotational deployments to the Baltic region, an increase in the number of destroyers stationed at Rota, Spain from 4 to 6, 2 additional F-35 squadrons to the United Kingdom, and finally, the UK has committed to train 10,000 Ukrainian soldiers every 120 days. Most of those troops won't actually sit in the frontline countries, though. They will be pre-positioned. They will pre-position their equipment and train on the ground frequently so they are ready to speed to the defense of NATO countries that border Russia in case of an emergency. The alliance has also released its new strategic concept, its first since 2010. The document, a roadmap for addressing threats and challenges in the coming decade, underscores just how much the security environment has changed in recent years. The previous strategic concept called Russia a strategic partner and did not mention China at all. The new one directly addresses both Russia's current aggression and China's growing influence. The Madrid summit also marks the first time that leaders of 4 Asian countries, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and South Korea, attended the military and diplomatic gathering, signaling the alliance's growing focus on Asia, even amid Russia's war in Ukraine. I appreciate that, Stabby Sticks. Yes, this is news. This is a news program. So, for those that are just joining us from the raid, thank you, everybody. We greatly appreciate you joining us. Greatly appreciate Death of Certainty coming with it, bringing you all here. This is the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup. We do this at Crowdsourced Politics every Thursday at roughly from about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to roughly about 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, covering the news that was of the last week with the kind of analysis only the crowd can provide. So we try to get as much news as we can packed into roughly a 2-hour program, and I pontificate throughout after sharing some facts and giving my opinions on that as well. So if that's something that you want and you like to hear it and you think that it should be promoted more, go ahead and smash that like button for the algorithms. It really does help us out. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at Crowdsourced Poll, where I will make announcements for new shows and keep a calendar therein. So if there's anything that comes up or chimes change, you can get updated as it happens. But with that, let us continue on with the news. All right, so we're going to move into U.S. politics now, starting with Congress. Now, while Congress is in recess until July 11th, our coverage will be brief, though. So, historic gun legislation was signed into law. So, bipartisan gun legislation that was overwhelmingly approved by the Senate was signed into law by President Biden. The bill passed the Senate last Thursday night with the support of 15 Republicans and all 50 Democrats. It passed the House 234 to 193 the following day, with 14 House Republicans voting in favor of the bill. President Biden did sign that legislation on Saturday. It marks the most significant update to the nation's gun laws in nearly 3 decades. Known as the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the bill was written in response to the shootings in both Buffalo, New York, and Uvalde, Texas, and sped through a usually slow-moving Congress. Though the bill's limited scope has left many disappointed, it does tighten up gun control in a number of key areas. The bill enhances background checks for gun buyers under the age of 21, and it should be noted here that prior to this tightening up, the juvenile record of a person that was buying a gun could not be accessed, and now that they can. So if a person had violent tendencies as an early teenager, then before the age of 21, that information becomes available in the background check system. It also provides billions of dollars for mental health services and to harden schools. So hardening schools means like anti break-in doors, maybe police officers, and that sort of thing, security cameras, etc., etc. And and finally, and most importantly probably, for a number of people, is that it closes the so-called boyfriend loophole that did not include intimate partners that weren't married that were domestic abusers from purchasing a firearm for 5 years. So prior to this, if a spouse beat on another spouse, that would make them ineligible to purchase a rifle once they were found convicted, or a weapon, rather, once they were convicted of the crime. Now that will include everybody. So if you're in an intimate partner situation, living together is in many states considered intimate partners, even if you aren't dating or what have you, this will include that as well. So this is a really good thing. So the plan also provides $750 million in grants to incentivize states to implement crisis intervention programs, clarifies the definition of a federal licensed firearm dealer, and creates criminal penalties for straw purchases and gun trafficking. The bill does not ban assault rifles or dramatically expand background checks, though. Two key provisions which were broadly popular among Democrats, but overwhelmingly opposed by conservatives. Turning over to a comment here, we have a comment from Stabby Stick saying, this is also a big win to show how federal funding to states works in these bills. And I agree. The federal government does have the power of the purse strings. And so that's what this is going to bring home for people again. They're going to realize, oh yeah, that's right, this is something we can do. And it's not always going to be a negative thing like No Child Left Behind and the like of that. Another thing that is important in this is the so-called crisis intervention programs. To clarify what that means, these are what is colloquially known as red flag laws. Now, I have debated people in the past about red flag laws, whether or not they should be considered to be an egregious breach of a person's rights. I like to say that it is fairly similar to a grand jury. We will arrest a person prior to finding them guilty of a crime, and this is a similar thing, except instead of arresting them, we take away the weapons that they have. After a judge hears a case and determines if there's enough there to actually pursue the case. And it doesn't, in my mind, doesn't make the defendant have to prove that they themselves aren't a harm to themselves and others. The state still does, but in the interim, just like with an arrest for a crime before somebody is found guilty, their gun, instead of them, is kept separate from them to protect the public. I don't see how anybody could see this as being a violation of rights. I kind of get their argument, but I disagree with it entirely. If you're going to be for one, you should be for both. And if you're against one, you should be against both. But that's never really how this goes down, right? So there's that. All right. Now, let us continue, though. So the Democrats are also having their slim majority declining with Leahy's injury. So what does this mean? Well, U.S. Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont has broken a hip in a fall at his home. The 82-year-old Democrat fell Wednesday night in McLean, Virginia, the statement said. Doctors determined the best course of action would be to have surgery to repair the hip as soon as possible. Until Leahy returns, Democrats' slim hold on majority is gone. Leahy has expected to make a full recovery and begin a healthy course of physical therapy immediately. Leahy is also the longest-serving sitting senator, and he announced in November that he will not seek re-election this fall. By the time his term expires in January of 2023, he will have served for 48 years in the Senate. So that is another update from politics side of the house. All right, let's see. Make sure that I'm not missing anything. I don't know why this stuff's not working. All right, it's working now. Cool. All right, my alerts are working again. All right, let us continue on, though. So now people that came in, they can see the title here. that we've saying that the SCOTUS trumps everything. And that is what we're going to get into now. We're going to start talking about the slew of SCOTUS cases that are working against not only rights that we hold dear, but also democratic priorities. We're going to start with Roe v. Wade. I'm sure everybody knows what's going on with Roe v. Wade, but we do still have to cover this. We're going to keep it short because there's still a lot of stuff to cover and everybody knows what is going on, but it's important to constantly highlight this. And we might do a full episode on Roe v. Wade and the complications therein that we'll see in the next coming months or so. Stay tuned for that. So obviously, the biggest news coming from SCOTUS is the decision to take away rights, something the court has never done before. We are referring, of course, to overturning Roe v. Wade. The decision and the leaked draft were fundamentally the same. Within hours of the decision, trigger laws in 26 states went into effect. Some of those states were blocked by state courts. In other states, the right to bodily autonomy and reproductive health decisions was codified by law. Protests erupted across the country and continue today. We'll present a comprehensive look at the impact of the decision in next week's newscast and cover Justice Thomas' opinion that the court should overturn other opinions in cases concerning access to contraceptives, same-sex relationships, and same-sex marriages. And we'll dive into the potential damages to the GOP this November due to this decision as well. Now, this was also, in addition to Roe v. Wade, there's also a lot of others and other things that have been coming in from this final term, the final term's opinions, before the term had ended. So we're going to go over to SCOTUS blog here because SCOTUS blog does a good, succinct recap view of what happened, and we're going to let them speak because, hey, if there's somebody who does it better than you.
Today, the Supreme Court.
Oh, that's really loud. Let me turn it down.
Today, the Supreme Court sided with Louisiana's Republican-controlled legislature in a voting rights battle over redistricting the state's 6 congressional seats. The decision came unsigned via the court's emergency/shadow docket, meaning we don't know the majority's reasoning here, but the decision was made over the dissents of the court's 3 liberal justices. So after the 2020 census, Louisiana's GOP-controlled legislature enacted a new voting map for the state's 6 congressional seats. One of those 6 districts had a majority of Black voters. Black people make up about a third of the state's population.
Now, one of the things that we should interrupt to mention here with this is that Roberts has always wanted the Voting Rights Act to be overturned in total. He simply went about it in this long view term way of going about it in order to protect the legacy of the court. Now, with everything that the court is ruling on, with a 6 majority conservative majority, with people less concerned about the legitimacy of the court and more concerned about enacting raw power, we are going to probably see less care about slowly, incrementally taking away rights or what have you, and see it just come out in full force. And that is part of this case's process. Play.
The state's Democratic governor vetoed the map, calling it unfair. So, civil rights groups sued, arguing it violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and a federal judge agreed with them, ordering the state to draw a new voter map that had 2 majority Black districts in time for the November election this year. So today, the justices granted an emergency appeal to stop that from happening. By the way, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act prohibits discrimination on the basis of race in voting procedures. And 1 year ago, last July, the Supreme Court weakened the test that applies to Section 2 claims in a case called Brownovich v. DNC. So today's decision has the effect of reinstating the GOP-drawn congressional voting map. And the court said it would hold on to the case until it decides a similar one out of Alabama set for next term. Today,
So, what does all that mean? Well, what that primarily means here, and I don't know why this is not working, so we're going to go ahead and move the highlights. What that means here is that essentially what we are seeing is what I said when I interrupted the program. And Roberts is very much still trying to like, hey, we should do things like this, but we'll see how that goes. So continuing on, though, with some SCOTUS news, we're going to continue on listening to SCOTUS blog to succinct some of these cases, and then I will pontificate afterwards. Let's continue on with the prayer in schools case.
Its second major religious freedom decision in a week, the case of the praying football coach. Today, the Supreme Court sided with the coach. Coach Joe Kennedy, a public high school football coach in Washington state, made a habit of kneeling on the 50-yard line after football games to say a quick prayer, and sometimes students would join him. Now, the school district told him not to do that. They were worried it would look like they were endorsing his religious point of view if he continued to do that.
And that is a very fair concern.
And that would violate the Establishment Clause. That prohibits the government from forcing you to go to church, creating a state religion, singling out one faith for special benefits, or taking other actions that otherwise sponsor or support religion. The school district also argued that the prayers might coerce students to participate in religious activity that they otherwise wouldn't. So Kennedy eventually lost his job because of it. But today, Justice Neil Gorsuch, writing for a 6-3 court, said the school district violated Kennedy's First Amendment rights to free speech and free exercise of religion when they told him not to kneel and pray. Gorsuch said the school district had a mistaken view that it had a duty to ferret out and suppress religious observances, even as it allows comparable secular speech. He ended with, the Constitution neither mandates nor tolerates that kind of discrimination.
I think that bit of the ruling is fair, but there isn't really comparable speech that is secular compared to religious prayer. Not really, especially when it comes to children, the involvement of children, I should say. Well, let's continue listening now.
Gorsuch also said that there was no indication in the record that anyone expressed coercion. Justice Sotomayor, writing for the court's liberal...
It should be noted here that it doesn't matter if someone expressed concern about the coercion existing. We're talking, again, one, we're talking about kids. Two, somebody doesn't need to complain for a thing to be bad or for a thing to violate the Constitution. Okay? So that's important.
Block reframed the question and said it really is whether a school district is required to allow one of its employees to incorporate a public communicative display of the employee's personal religious beliefs into a school event. The three justices said no. Sotomayor lamented the weakening of the Establishment Clause, as she called it, and saying it elevates one individual's interest in personal religious exercise in the exact time and place of that individual's choosing over society's interest in protecting the separation between church and state, eroding the protections for religious liberty for all. Noteworthy, Sotomayor cautioned the court relying on history and tradition over purpose and precedent. The justices are clearly divided on this issue. That's what guided the majority's decision in Dobbs. And Sotomayor cited the liberal bloc's hot off the presses dissents in the abortion case and the gun rights case. I think we'll see more of this argument going forward.
And I agree. I do think that we're going to see a lot more of this argument going forward. So let us continue with some of the ramifications of this, right? And explain to our audience and to y'all, whoever might be listening to this in the future, what exactly transpired that changed things, all right? So let's get to it, all right? So under precedent that existed until Monday, the coach's lawsuit was indeed frivolous. The Supreme Court had long held that the Establishment Clause outlines the recitation of prayer in public schools. It has forbidden prayer at graduation ceremonies and football games. Now, public prayer, this should be caveated with, public prayer by school officials, etc., explaining that schools must avoid state endorsement of religion and religious coercion of students. These rules derive from the quote-unquote Lemon Test, which the court created in 1971 and refined in 2005. The gist is that the government violates the Establishment Clause when a reasonable observer would view its actions as endorsing religion, not a particular religion, but religion in general. For decades, conservative judges have criticized this rule as unjustably hostile towards religion in the public square. Now they have prevailed. In his opinion for the court, Gorsuch overruled Lemon as well as its, quote, offshoot, the endorsement test, wiping out dozens of precedents in one fell swoop. With remarkable mendacity, the justice actually claimed that the court had already overruled these cases, citing a series of concurrences and dissents. Now, he disregarded defenses of these tests as useful gauges of a law's purpose and effects on religion. Gorsuch replaced the test with a novel amorphous standard. Quote, the Establishment Clause, he asserted, must be interpreted with reference to historical practices and understandings by asking what the founding fathers would have thought. Once again, the Supreme Court has compelled judges to become amateur historians, substituting a bright-line legal standard for mushy and subjective appeals to tradition and what it really amounts to, originalism. Now, one of the key things about this case is that a lot of what had been said by the majority of the case had twisted what the material facts of the case. So in the majority's opinion, they put in things like, oh, he just was trying to pray on the 50-yard line and he was fired for that. No, he wasn't fired for that reason. At least not in the way that they're implying. And the reason I say that is because when another coach from a visiting team essentially went to the school and was like, oh, it's cool that you're letting your coach do this. I think it's really, really great. And they're like, wait, what? We didn't know about this. So they investigated it and they were like, okay, on the side of caution, we're going to basically say, hey, you can't do this. There's nothing stopping you from praying. But, to go and make it a media spectacle, to go out to the 50-yard line and like encourage kids to join you and that sort of thing, we're not going to have that. You can pray by yourself. You can, do it on the sidelines. You can thank God, whatever. Just don't do it as a public official. You're on the clock. Okay. So don't do it while that's going on. And he seemed to be okay with it at first. And then he, quote, prayed to God and thought on it and decided to go forward with it anyways. It was the rebuke of that compromise that got him fired. It was basically he put the school at risk of lawsuit and therefore they terminated his employment. And in this sort of case here, what the justices are saying is that no one complained. Well, somebody did bring it up, and so there was somewhat of a complaint there. But also that, how would the best way to say this? Also that what was happening is that students were being, if not outwardly compelled to do this, a lot of them were probably experiencing peer pressure. And even if the entire community is 100% Christian, the fact of the matter is that in those kind of situations, the majority of people aren't going to speak up and they're going to go along to get along. And that is why I believe the justices ruled wrongly to a degree here. And I say to a degree because I don't want to stop somebody from praying in public. I just don't think school officials should be leading it anywhere. Unless it is explicitly a voluntary after school program that only people that sign up for it go to, kind of thing. When you're talking about sports, you're talking about equal access to the ability to play sports. You're talking Title IX. You're talking all these other things here, and it becomes an issue. It becomes an issue with that, and that is why this skeezes me out a bit. Nate Dallin, our friend Nate Dallin, had sent me very detailed, raw text of his analysis of how the Lemon test was like not really well defined, and how these tensions have been brought into the forefront by these kind of cases, and how it's all messy, and it might be a little less messy now, but it's still very messy. So I'm going to read that, and I'm going to probably ask him his opinions on it after I read it and everything, read the case, and then more than likely, I will probably do a full deep dive into this question and what kind of balancing acts between the rights of the participants, especially in schools, to forego that and forego any sort of social pressure to join in on that, and the rights of private individuals to exercise their religion, their religious practices in public. So again, stay tuned for that. And thank you for the follow, Liberty Twitcher. Appreciate it. Now, we have another Supreme Court case, though, that we have to talk about. And this one involves the executive branch, specifically the EPA, and what they can and can't regulate. Turning over again to SCOTUS blog, we'll go ahead and listen to that, and then we will pontificate as well.
Here is a quick explainer of the two cases decided by the Supreme Court this morning on its final day of decisions from argued cases this term. I'll do a more in-depth explainer later, but first, in West Virginia v. EPA, the Supreme Court sharply restricted the EPA's authority to regulate greenhouse gas emissions that cause climate change. It was a 6-3 decision with the court's conservatives in the majority, led by Chief Justice Roberts, and the court's liberal justices in dissent. I'll post an explainer below from when the case was argued that talks about what's at stake. The court sided with conservative states and fossil fuel companies in adopting a narrow reading of the Clean Air Act. 2, the Supreme Court allowed the Biden administration to terminate a controversial Trump-era immigration rule called Remain in Mexico that required asylum seekers at the southern border to remain in Mexico while they wait for an asylum hearing. That was 5-4, with Roberts and Kavanaugh joining the court's liberal justices in the majority. And at noon, we get a brand new justice.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about the court's ruling that complicates the administration's plan to combat climate change. So its proposal to regulate power plants emissions is expected by the end of the year. President Joe Biden aims to cut the nation's greenhouse gas emissions in half by the end of the decade and to have an emission-free power sector by 2035. Power plants account for roughly 30% of all carbon dioxide output. Quote, capping carbon dioxide emissions at a level will force a nationwide transition away from the use of coal to generate electricity may be a sensible solution to the crisis of the day, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote in his opinion of the court. But Roberts wrote that the Clean Air Act doesn't give the EPA the authority to do so, and that Congress must speak clearly on this subject. Quote, a decision of this magnitude and consequence rests with Congress itself, or an agency acting pursuant to a clear delegation from the representative body, he wrote. So with this particular case here, right, they're essentially saying that the Clean Air Act does not grant this wide breadth of authority to the Biden administration or to any presidential administration for that matter. While I have not personally read the exact opinion word for word of the case, it seems that this was more of a narrow ruling than I had feared, because they could have gone the way of saying that, which is what some jurisprudence wants, some conservatives want, which is to extremely limit the ability of Congress to delegate authority to the executive. That is something that some conservatives want. They want Congress to not be able to do delegation authority. They want everything to have to be a law, because if it has to be a law, it's less likely to happen. And because of the inability of Congress to know everything on an expert level, they feel like it will be more slow going, and it will favor their key constituents, which are, instead of regular people, business interest and special interest groups. Because when we're talking of a person that represents 700,000 people, they're going to go to the people that make the most noise and give them the most money, which are going to be corporations and special interest with big bags of money. And that is why this case was specifically brought by states with huge coal interest and fossil fuel interest. Among them was Texas, West Virginia, and I want to say Kentucky were like the top three. And all three of those states have either a extreme interest in coal or in natural gas. And that's what we're seeing there. Now, as far as excuse me, hold on a second. Now, as far as the immigration side of it, right? This is something that shouldn't have ever made it to the Supreme Court, honestly. And it did twice, I want to say. And that is the removal of Remain in Mexico policy by the executive branch. Biden came into office and he immediately removed Remain in Mexico, kept Title 42 under the CDC to do quick expulsions back across the border, but he got rid of the Remain in Mexico policy. A conservative judge in Texas ruled that the Biden administration could not do that, even though that it is clear as day that the federal government and explicitly with the president has the authority to set immigration policy and immigration actions, even in the sense of like determining how to enforce laws passed by Congress when it comes to these things as an inherent power of the executive, and that granted by the Constitution. When the Supreme Court ruled the way that it did, it essentially said, it's essentially told Biden that you did not take into account enough of what the states are telling you. Go back and redo it. And as far as I understand it, this happened twice before today. And it's kind of one of those weird punts that the Supreme Court can do without ruling explicitly on a case, to basically say, hey, that was with malice or ignorance, so therefore you have to redo it and come back to us. We're going to adjudicate this again when you do something different. And they essentially just delayed the implementation of his policy until a time, and I'm going to say it, John Roberts felt that it was sufficiently enough time to allow the states to prepare or whatever. It doesn't to me have any legal sense in the matter. It's more of one of those situations where like, this was not reasonable, so just do it again. It was the same reasoning, however, that Roberts used to force Trump to keep DACA. So this seems to be a personal pet project of Roberts, at least from what I can see, where Trump had the authority to just get rid of DACA. The Supreme Court said you did it with malice, so you didn't take into account enough, so we're going to stop you from doing it, probably because Roberts didn't want it to end, because Roberts saw that this would be a huge, in both situations, a huge pain, bring a huge amount of pain to various groups of people, and therefore they can't get rid of it. I don't know if a Supreme Court should have that kind of authority. And it does kind of go to show you how much we rest on the laurels of norms and how much we need to reform or codify norms into law, whether it be passage from Congress or from a constitutional amendment, whichever the case may be, to cement a particular thing into law permanently. And so that's why that ruling was weird, and why the other ruling is kind of like, I don't know. But lastly, for Supreme Court updates, we have the retirement of Justice Stephen Breyer. And Justice Stephen Breyer made his retirement official at noon today, and the nation watched as the first black female Associate Justice of the Supreme Court was sworn in. So let's watch as Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson takes her place on the highest court in the land, coming to you from C-SPAN. And let's listen and congratulate Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Further delay. Are you, without any further delay, are you prepared to take the oath?
I am.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Ketanji Brown Jackson, do solemnly swear
I, Ketanji Brown Jackson, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter.
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you very much, and now I'll turn things over to Justice Breyer.
Good. The judicial oath, will you raise your right hand, please? Thank you. I, Ketanji Brown Jackson,
I, Ketanji Brown Jackson,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will administer justice
that I will administer justice
without respect to persons
without respect to persons
and do equal right
and do equal right
to the poor and to the rich,
to the poor and to the rich,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon me as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States,
as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States,
under the Constitution and laws of the United States.
and laws of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Now, on behalf of all of the members of the court, I am pleased to welcome Justice Jackson to the court and to our common calling.
All right, so that is Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson being sworn in as the first Black woman to the Supreme Court. So promises made, promises kept. That was one of Biden's promises when he ran for president, that he would nominate a Black woman to the court. He did so. She got confirmed. Cool. And we did a very good recap of Ketanji Brown Jackson's legal theory, and you can get that on YouTube. Let me get the link for you real quick. Let me get the link for it. And I'll drop it in there. If that, there we go. And that's coming at you now in the chat. There you go. Go ahead and check out that video. It explains what happened when she was being confirmed and the kind of legal theory that she follows. It's a good little recap of that, and it should be good times for all. So let's continue on though with the news. And before we do that, first, if you have anything you want us to cover and the roundup, or if you'd like to join on any one of our many panel shows, here's how to let us know. First, go ahead and you can join our Discord. Links above or below, depending on where you're at. And we like to, we're building a pretty decent Discord community, and we're going to have contests and the like on our Discord community. We're trying to get as many different opinions on Discord as much as we can, but still remain civil as possible. Secondly, you can join the Tribune Commons. Now, the Tribune Commons is actually a Facebook group. So if that's something that you still do, then you can join the Facebook group here at Facebook/groups/Tribune Commons. That's where we get some of our news from. That's where we get some of our ideas for shows from. So if that's something that you do, hey, go ahead and join Facebook. We understand that it's boomer town over there, but hey, I'm a boomer, not really. Elder millennial. So I was one of the first people on Facebook. So we still do Facebook. And also, you can get us at Crowdsourced Poll on Twitter, where I like to post memes and whatever the hell else I feel like in under 255 characters. So that is what we have for you. And that's how you can get a hold of us. So let us continue on now with the news, starting state politics with Florida. So according to Raw Story, teachers in Orange County, Florida are being told to scrape rainbow stickers off doors and windows, take photos of their families off their desk if they have a same-sex spouse, and are being directed to report if a student comes out as LGBTQ, as Governor Ron DeSantis' Don't Say Gay bill goes into law as of July 1st. So attorneys for the districts held meetings with administrators last week and, quote, advised principals what behaviors would and would not be legal under the law during a camp legal presentation, ABC affiliate WFTV reports. The Orange County Teachers Association, otherwise known as CTA, says teachers are being told they cannot wear rainbows on their clothing, including lanyards distributed by the district last year. Elementary school teachers are being told to not even discuss their families if they have a same-sex spouse. Stickers denoting a particular classroom is a quote-unquote safe space for LGBTQ students and others are being told to be removed, and, quote, teachers will have to report to parents if a student comes out to them, and they must use pronouns assigned at birth, regardless of what the parents allow, the CTA reported. Quote, it will be alarming if our district chooses to interpret this law in the most extreme way, CTA President-elect Clinton McCracken told WFTV. We want them to protect student privacy. We want them to make sure that they're creating and helping to create safe classrooms. We believe our school board supports that. Now, we previously on the News Roundup reported about the Don't Say Gay bill in its entirety. And we predicted straight up exactly that this kind of thing would happen. And the reason that that is happening is because this is exactly what the proponents of these kind of bills want. They want gay people and trans people to go back into the closet. Because for them, they don't want to know that they exist. And they, for whatever reason, believe that exposing their children to it might turn them into sinners, might turn them gay, even though that is absolutely not how any of this works at all. And they're pointing to bullshit statistics like what Bill Maher did, a supposed liberal, about how a lot more students are coming out as LGBTQ. And what are they pointing to? Well, they're pointing to a massive rise among students claiming to be bisexual. Kids, or teenagers, essentially, claiming to be bisexual. And it's still less than 20%. And they're pointing to states where it is more welcoming to be LGBT and saying, oh, there's something weird here. That must be a trend or something. We got these trans trenders coming out of the woodworks and all this other kind of bullshit. And they can't wrap their fucking boomer brains, because Bill Maher's a boomer, around the fact that if you're more accepting, people are more likely to just be themselves. The reason that we had the 60s, the sexual revolution of the 60s and of gay rights happen shortly thereafter is because we got to a breaking point where people finally said that fuck it, I can't take it anymore, started to come out in droves and demand that their rights and themselves be respected as the human beings that they are. And all these laws against LGBTQ people are designed to force them back into the closet, designed to take us back to the 60s. Because they know if they can make it look bad to be gay, then a lot of people are like, oh yeah, it must be bad to be gay, and then just go with the flow again. Because that's how most people operate. The reason why we saw this huge shift in acceptance of gay people was because the law changed. Once the law changed, people were like, well, I guess it must not be bad anymore, so let's go ahead and support rights. So if they can change the law, if they can change the narrative, if they can make it to where people view gay people as okay, I'm not even gonna say it. You know where I was going with it. Okay, they can make them view that they need to go back into the closet to no longer exist publicly. That's how we'll say it. Then they know that people are less likely to be comfortable coming out, and then more people over time will side with them. All because of some dominionist Christian nationalist bullshit that is permeating not only through the courts, but our entire political system right now, especially among Republicans. Especially with people like Tucker Carlson, PragerU, Rufo, James Lindsay. All these people are just there to try to manufacture consent around this issue and force people to change, or to at least try to, or at least keep it to themselves. And it's not acceptable. Given everything that has happened with the Supreme Court over the last 2 weeks, it should become as no surprise that these minor victories built up to that. And this is something that we have to be worried about. Rights are only rights as long as people accept them, and it's protected by force of law. If the people no longer accept them, and they're no longer, or sometimes more importantly, no longer under the force of law, those rights don't exist. It's just on a piece of paper. That's why partly why the founding fathers made it so hard to change the Constitution. Because they didn't want radical change to happen, and they didn't want it in one direction or the other. Part of the reason why they did it. Now, I know that we shouldn't be like, well, what do the founders think? Because the founders, quite honestly, wouldn't respect women, gay people, black people, Native Americans, brown people, etc. They didn't view them, a lot of them didn't view them as really human. But this is the logic that those people use. And so exposing that actually helps with the cognitive dissonance a little bit. So we have to mention it. I'm not going to tell you to go out and vote for Democrats, because I know a lot of people right now are very pissed off about the inaction the Democrats are taking. There might be some strategic reasons for that, but they need to do something. But there's stuff that you can do, even absent of voting, at least voting straight Democrat. There are many states in the country that have ballot initiatives. Look up to see if your state is one of those states that has a ballot initiative process to get a constitutional amendment in your state, and find out how many signatures it takes to get on the ballot, and keep doing it until it succeeds. That is the least that we can do. Yes, I'm raising the bar. The least you could do used to be voting. The least you can do is now becoming an activist. Because this is not going to stop. And if you don't have, if for whatever reason you don't have the ability, you don't have the time, you can still make posts online and encourage other people to do so. But it is at the point where everybody on the liberal left coalition line needs to activate. And this has been the case. Don't get me wrong. This has been the case since before 2016. But now it's come to a head, and everybody's like, oh shit, like we took the courts for granted. I didn't think Roe versus Wade would be overturned. And all these other things would be overturned. Clarence Thomas is saying, get rid of all these rights. Explicitly coming out and saying it. Many Republicans are now. They felt the little kick in their ass from that win, the little, right? They love it. They want to keep making those victories. The way that you stop it is activism, is getting states to pass constitutional amendments in your favor and preventing constitutional amendments from going against you and against your worldview. So that's what we have to do. But with that, I have to continue on. We're going to continue on here, right? That's what I have to say about the Don't Say Gay bill again, because we're going to have to continuously talk about this. All right. So coming out of New York now, this is a New York thing. So the Associated tongue-tied. All right. So coming out of New York, The Associated Press reports that the New York governor signed a law on Monday intended to prevent local officials from enacting rules that might suppress people's voting rights of their race because of their race. The John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act, named after the late civil rights activist who represented Georgia in the U.S. House, makes New York one of the first states to bring back a version of a process known as pre-clearance that was gutted by the landmark Supreme Court decision in 2013 under Justice Roberts, as said earlier in this program. Now, under the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965, states and counties with a record of suppressing the right of black voters once had to seek U.S. Justice Department approval before changing voting rules. Now, local governments or school districts with a record of discrimination in New York must also gain approval from state officials in order to pass certain voting right policy. The new state law will also expand language assistance for voters who don't use English as their first language, and also provide legal tools to fight discrimination or to fight discriminatory voting provisions. An effort in the U.S. Congress to revive parts of the Voting Rights Act didn't make it through the Senate because of the filibuster, because of Joe Manchin, because of Christian Cinema, and probably for maybe other fucking do-nothing Democrats. Basically conservatives that don't want to get rid of the filibuster because, oh no, maybe the Republicans will take away our rights. They're doing that anyways. And Joe Manchin had at one point said, well, we can bring back a standing filibuster. Well, why didn't you do it then? Because you're a corrupt piece of shit? Probably. Now, the parts of New York required to get pre-clearance before changing voting laws will be determined by the state officials based on a formula and list of conditions in the legislation. This is a positive development, but it's not positive enough because it's happening in a state that is pretty reliably liberal. Not gonna say Democrat, but like liberal, equal rights, etc. For the most part, and there's problems with policing like there is everywhere else in the country. So don't get it twisted. I know there's problems. But it's not the same kind of issues that are happening in Texas. And that is what we're going to next. Because of course we are. Because everything that's batshit insane comes out of fucking Texas, where I live. All right. So I know you've heard about this, all right? I know this has made it in its news, but we need to talk about it. And that is the new GOP platform featuring cultural wars and delusions coming out of Texas GOP. So the Texas GOP wrapped up its state convention this month by releasing a list of principles, constitutional issues, and resolutions, some of which have triggered quite the outcry. It's 40 pages long and addresses several hot-button issues. It's equal parts culture war and delusion. On homosexuality, the platform states that, quote, homosexuality is an abnormal lifestyle choice. It's not a choice. It's not abnormal. You just don't like it because of your fucking religion. Stop trying to shove your religion down my throat. Continuing on, it goes, we believe that there should be no granting of special legal entitlements or creations of special status for homosexual behavior. There's not. That's not how the law works. Equality isn't special privilege. It's just equality. You're only saying this because you want to oppress them and force them back in the closet like we said previously. Continuing on, regardless of a state of origin, and we oppose any criminal or civil penalties against those who oppose homosexuality out of faith, conviction, or belief in traditional values. In other words, we want to be able to be bigots in all the things that we want to be bigoted about, whether it's the church, which, fine, I don't care I care what churches do, but not enough to quibble about that one. But businesses, people that offer services to the public, you want to deny them the ability to use services based on their immutable characteristics, all because your Sky Daddy says that it's not good. He doesn't even say that. That's even in question among legal scholars. I mean, not legal scholars, religious scholars. So it's all just bullshit. It's just this culturally ingrained fucking miasma of like vitriol and hate all because it makes them disgusted or something. I don't fucking get it. Oh. My wife just said in the background, aroused. Yes, it's self-hate a lot of the times. It's true. Now, continuing on, they said on gender, the GOP announced more items about gender identification in sports. One says biological males must compete against biological males and biological women compete against women in athletics. Another says no medical practitioner can interfere with puberty, use sex hormones or surgery, or on anyone under the age of 21 for sex change purposes. I'll let her know, Stabby. Now, what is this going to mean? Well, we already saw in Texas, this is already within the Texas law, basically, right? There is a trans man that is a wrestler, or was. This is actually a few years ago, so they're probably graduated by now. So I'm going to say there was a trans man that was a wrestler that was forced to compete against women because of these kind of things. And he more or less dominated the sport because of the hormones that he was on, because he was already taking testosterone. All he wanted to do was compete against men because he is a man. And these kind of laws prevented that. At the same time, these laws prevent assigned male at birth people from competing in women's sports if they're a trans woman, despite the fact that many of these people, now with new technology, with new understanding, are on puberty blockers, preventing them from having an unfair advantage in the sport. It's just all kinds of fucked up. And when you look at these people, you can't really tell. And even if you can, it doesn't matter. Because we're talking about a sport. We're talking about high school. Like, it's not, there isn't this like some nefarious plot like some gender critical turfs want to say about like trying to destroy women's sports from the inside because men are just super sexist. It's not that. We just want people to be able to live as they are, as who they are, and their most authentic self, with love, compassion, understanding, and acceptance. Absent that, at least not any outright bigotry against them. But we can't have that, because, as my wife said, might turn them on. That's what we have here with that. And by the time a person is 21, puberty blockers don't matter anymore. And it becomes a lot harder for a person to transition easily, we'll say, after going through puberty. And the amount of harm that happens to a person when they go through puberty as a trans person, or the potential harm, because it doesn't happen to everybody, so let's not broad brush, but most, leads the lack of acceptance and everything leads to things like suicide, self-harm, etc. And if we want to protect kids, which apparently the GOP says they want to do, which is, we know it's a lie, then these are things that should be allowed under consultation of the doctor, medical professionals, and the like. Because doctors take the oath of do no harm. And their parents, and the patient knows what's best for them. Continuing on with the platform, though, they talk about abortion. Now, they already got that big win, right? Big win for women dying, I guess. But they talk about it. And what do they say? Well, this is what they say. So the platform calls for the complete abolition of abortion and prohibiting the teaching of sex education, sexual health, sexual choice of identity in any public school in any grade whatsoever. Apparently, they just want kids to be stupid, to get knocked up, to get STDs, all in the name of Jesus or some other bullshit. The platform also calls for Obergefell versus Hodges, the Supreme Court decision legalizing same-sex marriage nationwide, to be overturned. Because, again, dominionists is going to dominionize, and that means try to dominate you and enforce their beliefs down your throat. Now, the platform notes that, quote, Texas retains the right to secede from the United States as well. And liberals around the country are like, let them go. Never win another election again. No. That will trigger a civil war. You can't just say, let them go, because that's not happening. Because it doesn't stop with one state. One state's going to be like, I secede. And if you say, okay, a lot of other states are like, I want to do that too. I want to form my own nation. And the amount of harm that will become to everybody involved is going to push people to the brink, and violence is going to erupt out, and it will be a civil war. And even if you do everything in your power to prevent it, nefarious actors overseas, China, Russia, maybe Saudi Arabia, will exploit that to foment more violence in order to weaken the United States and be able to do what the fuck they want on the global stage. That's not something a lot of liberals want to talk about. Basic liberals that think that just let them go, just let them go. They don't want to think about that. That's what will happen. Another provision called for the United States to withdraw from the United Nations because globalism is bad. New World Order. We can't have the New World Order telling us what to do. Yeah, that's not happening though. It's a fever dream. And you know what? I'm going to say this because this is a thing. So this part here is a thing that a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people do not understand why this New World Order thing is like so big among Republicans. Have you heard of the little series, little best-selling series of books called Left Behind? Do you realize that a lot of Christians, especially Dominionists and evangelicals, believe that is prophecy? And that they believe that Revelations talks about a one world government, and they view that as being objectively evil and the product of Satan? You can't escape these kind of things here. Say what you will with like left-leaning people that are anti-global capitalism, right? They have their own issues, but it's not like this. It's not an issue of saying that somebody that comes out and says, I would like to see a one world government so that there is less war and conflict in the world. These people hear that, they hear the Antichrist. And that is why they're against these things. Continuing on, and in a dizzying display of outright magical thinking, the GOP also said it rejects the 2020 presidential election and believes President Joe Biden was not legitimately elected to office, despite all evidence to the contrary, and it is just a lie. It's a lie to gin up the base, to keep them engaged, to keep them riled up, to bring them to the point of violence in order to again dominate and suppress other people. Quoting from that, quote, we believe the 2020 election violated Article 1 and 2 of the U.S. Constitution. The various secretaries of states illegally circumvented their state legislatures in conducting their elections in multiple ways, including by allowing ballots to be received after November 3rd of 2020, the GOP platform said. On that last point, at no point has the United States ever said that a ballot can't come in after Election Day. Do you understand how many military members would have their votes not counted simply by having a rule stating it has to be there by the 3rd? People that are working for the government overseas would just be instantly disenfranchised. Everybody. You're on for whatever reason, you're on a business trip, disenfranchised. Sucks to be you. Because no matter what happens, even if you got your vote in, the vote by mail in 20, send it out 20 days, shit happens. Mail gets lost. It takes time to go around the globe. But we can't have that because apparently, for some reason, voting in person is better. Now, it's just the method that they prefer because they know that their people can afford to take a day off of work and miss pay to vote. That's what it boils down to. And if they have long lines, they feel like people say, it's not worth my time. That's the reason why they're against it. Because they think that their people will go out and vote in person more often than people on the other side. It is rank partisanship. It is why you saw people in Arizona demanding count the votes. Meanwhile, people in Michigan saying stop the count on November 3rd. Because they were told by their people that we got this one. We have to count all the votes. We're going to get it. But this group over here, no, we don't have the votes. Tell them to stop the count. Rank partisanship. Stupid. So S-Boss says, quote, right-wing nutjobs want to destroy America? What else is new? I know, but it has to be said, and people need to know just the amount that they want to destroy America. Continuing on, this is a big one. So the Voting Rights Act got some attention as well. In that platform, they say, quote, we urge the Voting Rights Act of 1965, codified by 1402 and updated in 1973, be repealed and not reauthorized. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 is a landmark civil rights era bill that banned racial discrimination in elections by prohibiting any voting rules that, quote, result in the denial or abridgment of the rights of any citizen to vote on account of race or color. Now, during the convention, organizers screened the film 2,000 Mules at least 3 times. Now, the film was recently discussed during January 6th committee hearing, where former Attorney General Bill Barr said the film's central premise, the election location data proved people were used as mules to stuff ballot boxes, was indefensible. Flat out lies. Coming from Bill Barr, a person that made the legal, well, didn't make it, helped bring to popularity the legal theory of the unity executive, where a president is king as long as they're in power. Essentially, to make a long story short. Even he is saying, no, this is bad. Now, the platform has resulted in some backlash, including resignations of leadership of Texas log cabin Republicans, an association of gay Republicans, and from some high-ranking National Party members. Now, I have to say it, they were fine with everything else, but once the gay things were put in this bill where it was like targeting them, they're like, oh, this is too much. We can't have that anymore. It's a problem that Republicans have in a lot of instances. As long as it doesn't affect them, fuck everybody else. But as soon as it affects them, oh, we have to protect ourselves now. Now, also, Florida's Senator Rick Scott, who chaired the GOP Senate Collections Committee, said that he would not have supported the homophobic language. Former Ohio governor and 2016 Republican presidential candidate John Kasich called the Texas GOP convention a clown show on CNN, adding that, quote, I think even clowns were embarrassed by what they saw down here. Meanwhile, you're still voting Republican, and you're still a Republican, and you're not donating money to stop Republicans. Bro, your words don't mean shit to me anymore. Okay? I need you to do something. I need you to say what you want about Midas Touch being grifters, okay? They're at least putting money to try to stop Republicans in some of these states from winning office. Do better. But that ends our little segment about state politics and the Texas GOP. So, let's turn over now to the U.S. economy. So, according to Yahoo Finance, the U.S. economy is likely to slow in 2022 and 2023, but will, quote, narrowly avoid a recession as the Federal Reserve implements its rate tightening plan to curb inflation, the International Monetary Fund had said. Quote, the policy priority now must be to expeditiously slow wage and price growth without precipitating a recession, the IMF said in a statement. This will be tricky, as global supply constraints and domestic labor shortages are likely to persist, and the war in Ukraine creates additional uncertainties, the report had said. Now, just this past week, we had a live episode about immigration, the border and the economy, and we mused on that, and you should check it out once it's published here in the next week, about how bad the labor shortage actually is, with some insights from an immigration employment attorney about that. Now, continuing on though, The Fed's plan of quickly getting its benchmark rate to 3.5 to 4% should create an upfront tightening of financial conditions, which will quickly bring inflation back to target. IMF Managing Director Christiane Georgieva was told reporters. Based on the policy path outlined at the June Federal Open Market Committee meeting and an expected reduction in the fiscal deficit, the IMF expects the U.S. economy will slow, Georgieva said. The fund has also, quote, also just conducted a very useful set of discussions with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. Quote, we are conscious that there is a narrowing path to avoid a recession in the U.S., she said. We also have to recognize the uncertainty of the current situation. That being how much the war in Ukraine will impact this, droughts might impact this, further tightening of the supply chains may impact this. Now, about supply chains, though, one of the important things to understand about supply chains is that right now, all across pretty much every industry, especially those that deal with computer chips, companies are trying to buy a year's worth of supply at a time. And many companies are actually fulfilling those orders. What does this mean? Well, it means that the supply chain constraints are loosening. But due to fear of not being able to get parts when it's needed, it's still a very tight supply market. For those that may not know, we operate still of a theory of just-in-time supply, which means that you only have at most 3 months of supply on hand to meet demand out for 3 months, or demand for even a month, or whatever it is, right? That has gone away to an extent due to COVID and the tightening of economies all across the globe. So that's why you still see shortages of some things. You're also seeing shortages of some things because now that that is loosening, and as I just said, companies are buying years worth of stuff up front, it's still putting pressure on that. But as more inventories develop and become full, you'll see that loosen up to a degree. And you actually might see some prices come down because they're going to be too much in production to meet those year of supply. And so if there's a glut of it, then you're going to see prices come down. Now, continuing on though, if there's ultimately is a recession, it would likely be relatively short, said Nigel Clark, deputy director in the IMF's Western Hemisphere Department. Policymakers raised interest rates by 75 basis points last week, the single biggest move since 1994. And Powell signaled that another increase, either of the same magnitude or of a 50-point basis, was on the table for July. The Fed chief and his colleagues have pivoted aggressively to fight the hottest inflation in 40 years, amid criticism that they left monetary policy too easy for too long as the economy recovered from COVID-19. They've raised the rate by 1.5 percentage points this year, and officials forecast about another 1.57 points of future cumulative tightening in 2022. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February, global oil prices have risen dramatically, exacerbating inflation that has had stoked by pandemic-related supply chain disruptions, and especially in the US, the fiscal response to COVID-19. In the press conference, Georgieva said the IMF sees the need for a policy that would prevent further upward pressure on oil prices, something she discussed with Yellen this past week. Noting that America's price pressures are now broad-based and go well beyond increases in energy and food prices, Georgieva said Yellen and Powell left no doubt as to their commitment to bring inflation back down. One suggestion that IMF had for alleviating inflation pressures is for Biden administration to roll back tariffs that have been placed on steel, aluminum, and a range of Chinese goods over the past 5 years. President Joe Biden's trade chief, Catherine Tai, previously said, the tariffs on more than $300 billion in annual U.S. imports of Chinese products provide significant leverage and are useful from a negotiating standpoint. It's also useful from the fact that, protectionism doesn't necessarily actually protect jobs. It kind of reconfigures the economy to a degree, but it can help encourage insourcing more. So it's one of those things that we have to think about. So the IMF has also supported the Biden administration Build Back Better agenda, saying it would help release supply-side constraints, improve the safety net, support labor force participation, and incentivize investments and innovation. The failure to pass the package in Congress represented a missed opportunity, Georgieva said. Quote, the administration should continue making the case for changes to the tax, spending, and immigration policy that will help create jobs, increase supply, and support the poor. Oh, KOE, yes, thank you. So this is time. Yep. So yeah, it is time for me to end this here because I'm supposed to be on another podcast here. So what we'll do here is we'll skip over to News of the Weird. So for those that may not know, News of the Weird is what we like to do to share a little fun story that we find somewhere in the world, mostly in the United States, but it does go global, kind of as a palate cleanser and some interesting stuff, just to bring some brevity some levity to the News Roundup cast. And today we have a doorbell cam finding a woman saving a goose from an eagle attack. Let's watch. And that's it, because I don't want to get banned from Twitch. So a Canadian woman proved the mothers are real life superheroes after incredibly rescuing her pet goose from a bald eagle while breastfeeding her baby. The stay-at-home mother of 3 had, quote, lost 3 chickens in the last week. The woman initially thought that the culprit was a hawk until she witnessed her pet goose named Frankie be swooped up by a bald eagle as she was nursing the baby wearing just underwear at the time. The video garnered more than 7 million hits, which we just found. So with that, everybody, I am sad to say that we are out of time for the news roundup, but we will be continuing on with the streaming because I am going on another podcast. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us. It makes all the difference in the world to us, because without you, we'd just be a few people shouting into the void that is the internet, and you make everything worth this more worthwhile. We like to special thanks to our Facebook community for topics and ideas, and to our copy producer, Nikki Adams. This Bruno's Roundup happens most every Thursdays from 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to roughly 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And and that's what we do. We also do a couple of other podcasts. We have Cypher State, which is a foreign affairs and foreign policy focused podcast. We also do Praxis Run, which interviews activists from across the political spectrum to understand what makes them into activists, what lessons they learned, so other people can learn from them. And we also run a Discord, so please be sure to join the Discord. So everybody, thank you all so much for joining the News Roundup. So as we say at Crowdsource Politics, keep your head up through the political storm.
To take
Phil reached out to find a gentleman that would be fun to join the show. Has his own podcast as well, so always trying to get new people on and have some fun with us, and maybe give us a little pushback once in a while. It'll be fantastic. So without further ado, let's introduce. Phil just left, but let's introduce Cypher.
Hey everybody, thank you for having me on. I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't seen any of your content, but Phil's asked me to come on here, so I figured I'd give y'all a good time. So we'll see how this goes.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. Now, I had to just take a moment because my daughter's laptop was still on Wi-Fi and she was watching Netflix. It's like, I kind of need the Wi-Fi power, kid. I'm in a village of 300 people. I need everything I can to stream tonight. Sorry, kiddo. But Cypher, I had a big introduction about how, like, you were greater than Mekhi Phifer, better than Rowdy Roddy Piper, the one, the only motherfucking Cypher. I had this whole intro ready, but another time, another day, sir. But, I invited you on this evening of crowdsourced politics on YouTube, if that's correct, and Twitch as well.
Correct.
Yes, we are never above shameless self-promotion here at Big Bucket Empire. But I figured, we're going to be talking about the Roe case probably just a little bit. I think we might even touch on it a frit. And I figured it'd be good for there to be a little bit of pushback, because otherwise it might just look like a bunch of right-wingers spiking the football over the Roe decision. So I thought, hey, why not, in the interest of equal time, we're going to bring on the one, the only Cypher. And we've got a couple of interesting topics this evening to touch on. I think the Roe is going to be like the main event. We're going to build to it, and we're going to get there. But du jour this evening.
Let's kick it off with the AOC's most recent appearance, and the only reason I usually don't try to do any dunking on her, but there was three. I know, right? There was three specific things that went through on she went into the lion's den of Stephen Colbert's show. And she's gonna get a bunch of really, really tough questions, and she's gonna get. I know.
If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
I'm sorry, I've got a cold chicken. I think my sense of sarcasm is a little off.
Broken.
I hope you're being hyperbolic there.
It's your long COVID. It's okay.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, but one of the bigger ones that actually kind of blew up on Twitter a little bit, but probably the one that everybody's talking about the most is pressing AOC on running for president. And then she did a specific call to Joe Biden when it comes to actions against the filibuster in order to codify Roe, and several other things. Oh my God, it's time. That's right. Project Satface, welcome back. So yeah. Did anybody watch any of these clips or hear anything about this? I guess we'll start there.
Nobody watches Stephen Colbert live anymore. They just watch the YouTube clips after. That's the way everybody watches TV these days.
That's true.
If it scrolls across my TikTok feed, somebody posted the clips, then maybe I would have seen it.
Wait, you mean to tell me boomers are on TikTok now? Fuck!
I know.
Yeah. Actually, it's mostly boomers. Turns out, that's how I got all my followers. Was thirst.
Oh, that's right. You're not plugged into right wing TikTok. There's a whole other side of TikTok.
I'm not plugged into TikTok at all because it's owned by the Chinese, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, look at you guys.
Right. This motherfucker is
giving your personal information to the Chinese government. What kind of conservatives are you?
This motherfucker's spitting here, folks.
Phil's gonna turn into a lefty tonight. Here we go.
Oh God! It's like, hey, I remember a couple of years ago, me, Tony, and Chicken were having a knockdown drag out over that very topic, and it was it was really something. I'll just put it. But yeah, you do raise an excellent point that TikTok is at this point we didn't know, but we kind of knew. Now we know because of leaks that you're freely and willfully giving your data to a hostile foreign power on TikTok, and it's very unfortunate.
You don't live stream on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, DLive, or any of those other popular.
Well, hey, no, there you're being spied on, and your data's being collected by the good old American FBI. You see, that's different. The NSA and the FBI, that's more better, Tony. That's
better.
more
Not
better.
harvested by foreign entities at all. Absolutely not.
Well, no, they have to buy it from our intelligence agencies first, so that's more better, T.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
capitalism.
it is.
yay.
It's literally is better. I don't know. I don't know what the sarcasm is there. Wouldn't you rather have? When
Your
you
tax
rather
dollars
have
are
the,
taking your information. It's great.
Hey, that's fine. That's better. Hey, better than the authoritarian Chinese, right?
Yeah.
Well, now, Cypher, as the resident, well, let's just, I'm not going to, sorry to paint with a broad brush, but as the resident lefty of the show, let's be frank, you're
I mean,
probably
comparatively,
more
more
left
than likely, yeah.
Yeah, grading on a curve, yes. Now, coming down to 2024, and the primary is Bernie versus AOC. Who you casting your ballot for in Texas?
I'm sorry. Say again.
If it's 2024 and the Democratic primary is not, I accidentally messed up, not Bernie, but Biden versus AOC.
Biden.
Sorry. I know.
I mean, this hypothetical doesn't matter because it's not going to happen, but probably AOC. And I say probably because it depends on how far, well, not far, how many concessions Biden is willing to actually make to get people. And to be frank, though, I mean, if Biden, Biden's going to win the nomination. The Democratic Party isn't ready for AOC. Like, let's be real.
Oh no, it's not.
Actually,
So it's not.
Chicken, you remember when we went off air the first time you ever had me on? I said, dude, this is my prediction. Eventually, within the next 20 years, AOC is going to be the president of the United States.
100% can happen.
I stand by that because there's only two people in American politics that get that level of negative reaction, and it's Trump and AOC. And number 3 isn't even close. And if you can get people engaged, you pretty well got them. And so that's, to me, I think AOC is probably going to, maybe not 2024, but sooner rather than later, I think she's going to be the Democratic nominee. And it's going to be
I just can't envision a world where the sitting president can't win the primary.
Well, there's not going to be a primary, more than likely. So
exactly.
I mean, there'll be one.
It's not even like, it's not even going to be like Democrats, to like prevent one. It's just, it's not going to happen because of all the stuff that your side is doing right now. The fact that this is all happening is going to more than likely energize Democrats to fall in line to a degree, not completely. There is less loyalty among liberal left coalition than there is on the right wing coalition, but it will cause people to more or less fall in line to a better degree than we've ever seen in the last, I guess since Obama's first term.
Well, I mean, we're about to see, we got a midterm election coming up here really soon. And it's kind of like that scene from Daniel Day-Lewis Lincoln, where he said, well, from this day, I named all slaves emancipated from this day henceforth. But I thought I might have been wrong about that. So I gave the American people a year and a half to think about it, and they reelected me. And so we're about to have a very similar situation. We're about to see in this midterm what the people think of this exactly. But I don't think it's going to have a reverberating effect on this midterm necessarily. I was talking with Tony about this, and Tony said, Phil, if you think the right's not going to get any pushback, or you don't think the pendulum's going to swing back at you in some way hard, you're fucking kidding yourself. And I said, I understand what you're saying there, T, because for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's just the way it is. So if you push one way, the pendulum's going to swing back the other way. But I thought about it because in 2015, when the gay marriage decision got handed down, I was attending some very evangelical churches at the time, and they were saying oh my God, we're like 2 Supreme Court decisions away from it being illegal to live our lives according to the gospel. And so they became activated. And like I've said, and it resulted in Trump becoming elected and then getting 3 Supreme Court justices. And so now for folks on the left, you got gay marriage, but it cost you Roe v. Wade. And so it's really a question of now, what is going to be the reaction to that from the left? And I don't think it's going to be something so surface level as just one election swings. I think there's going to be.
You're saying this is just a pendulum swinging, equal opposite reactions back and forth. It's just going to ping pong around.
Okay.
Kind of, but go ahead.
No, I honestly reject this whole pendulum swinging thing. The people, what we're seeing, there's some pushback on, we'll say, for lack of a better term, woke politics, right? There's some pushback on that. Not a lot. Yeah. There's some, right? But when it comes to things like gay marriage, abortion rights, etc., nothing swung. Only thing that changed is who's had power. So with the Supreme Court, they slowly got more and more right-wing people into the Supreme Court since Bush, right? They prevented Obama from getting a duly appointed Supreme Court justice. They took that gamble. They won. Congratulations. You took a huge gamble. You won. You almost fucked yourself, but hey, it paid off in the end, right? And all that changes is the people are in power. The people that are able to make law. Because the Supreme Court makes law. That's common law. That's just how this system is designed. It's how America has always been. And now you have the situation where we have your side having this issue where they're the dog that caught the car. What the fuck are you going to do with it? And people on my side are like, people that are like, I'm going to call them basic liberals here. People that are like, oh, I think that the system will work out. It should be fine. Are like, what the fuck? And their heads are just exploding everywhere. Meanwhile, people like me have been seeing the writing on the wall since 2002. Okay? Like, this is something that evangelicals, that the Federalist Society, that the groups like the Family, the Focus on the Family, all these kind of right-wing groups have been wanting since the 60s. Some of these groups exist only because of Roe v. Wade.
Federalist Society is the main one. Yeah, they've done a lot of work on this.
So, as someone on the right, I was shocked when this is actually going to happen. Like, I thought this was just like, this is just a problem that the Republicans can always campaign on and never really do anything about. And just like you said, like when we had the leak come out, I said, like, I do feel like we're a dog that's about to catch this car, and right wingers, we got to own this one. So let's not pretend like this is all going to be fairies and boxes of fluffy doves going forward. There's going to be some collateral here to understand, but this is the way we are going now. Clarence Thomas is pretty much runs the court now, for lack of better terms. John Roberts is his only real counterweight, and only if all 5 other conservative justices aren't strictly behind him. So like Nate Dallin said a couple weeks ago, Trump supporters, your ballot that you cast in 2016 will probably be the most influential and consequential ballot you ever cast in your life, and it will be unlikely that anyone will ever get a chance to do something like that ever again.
And they shouldn't get the chance to do it again, to be frank.
Think about how bad Hillary feels for not visiting just a couple more states before the 2016 election.
I don't think
that's a likable woman in politics.
Well, no, I don't think that would have mattered much. I understand the argument, right? Because she ignored the Rust Belt. 100% very good critique. Everybody should make it, like, right? Hold people's feet to the fucking fire. Tell them when they fuck up. I just don't think that actually had as much sway as people think it did. In Michigan specifically, I think what happened in Michigan is actually Obama showing up to Michigan and drinking the Flint tap water.
Yeah, that was
I
bad.
think that fucked
really
things
stupid.
up.
That was a little tone deaf.
It was tone deaf. It was also, and nobody believed that he actually was drinking Flint water. Like, even if he was, no one was going to believe it. Like,
he thought that was going to work because he went and swam in the Louisiana Ocean with his kids when there was that big oil spill. He's like, well, I did that, and that was totally a good photo op, so why won't this work?
Yeah, I think that turned off a lot of people, and that happened too close to the election, if I recall correctly. It was like 6 months, maybe? Was it 6 months? I don't know. I don't know the exact time frame, but I think that turned off more people than Hillary Clinton not showing up. Because she only lost by like less than a percentage. So
it was a close one. It was a nail biter.
Yeah, it's one of those situations. Sorry, go ahead, Phil.
No, I was just gonna say that's kind of our problem with our modern elections is, okay, one person got 51% and the other one got 49%. And that's pretty much and it's that fucking close everywhere in all the major places that count. And then like, if you like, even like, oh, there was some chicanery here. It's like, fuck, how do you even prove it when the margins are so fucking slim? Not saying that there's been any, I'm saying there's been no court case that has affirmed any fraud in the election. Let me just say that right now. So Susan Wiki doesn't bar us for all time.
No erection fraud. Yeah.
But I do want to say, this is something that I've noticed that's kind of happened on both the left and the right is, like, if we were to assume the alternate timeline where Hillary had won in 2016, what we would have been having this week would have been having kind of the equal opposite on the left, where what we've had is, folks on the right for years been like, oh, I'm gonna, I want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare, and all the, you know the general talking points. But then when they get to the point of the Supreme Court's gonna make it, oh well, guess abortion's illegal, LOL, and they just kind of shrug their shoulders and say, oh well, that's just the way it is. Now, if it would have been the timeline of Hillary Clinton winning, you would have seen much the same, where it would have been like, people on the left are like, I support the Second Amendment, and I think we should have the Second Amendment, but then when it gets to, well, okay, you don't have a right to a gun in or outside the home. Oh well, guns are illegal, LOL. And you would have just seen kind of that sort of weird juxtaposition where you have folks on the left and the right, sort of what I've heard called hiding their power, where they're like not being quite genuine with what it is that they're wanting, because it's really weird, because people that I've heard for years saying, oh, a woman's right to choose and all that, like suddenly you're hearing a lot of baby killer talk. Like these people are killing babies, and it's like, it's very strange.
Well, yeah, it's because they gotta win. So of course they're doing that.
Big W. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to push back just a little bit on that. So not a ton. I don't think the justices that Hillary Clinton would have appointed would have been that anti-gun. I don't think that would have been the case, because again, we're talking about liberals here, not leftist. And I know that if you go further enough left, you get your gun back. I understand that, but the extreme anti-gun crowd, I don't think would have had much in the way of Clinton serving them a good purpose.
Yeah, there's one thing I've always kind of wondered: if Hillary did win, would it seemed with Trump, obviously it became a bigger divide in mainstream politics. In the discourse obviously was terrible. If Hillary would have won, yeah, she's a shit person, and most people really don't care for her necessarily. But would her policy stances actually have driven things apart? Would the media been as abrasive as they were with Trump? No, like I'm not saying it would have been a better world at all, because I just cringe anytime I think about this devil woman. But you kind of wonder, like you said, what were her justices? What would they have been?
Well, we'd be 4 years into this inflationary period at least. We'd have a good start.
No, because Clinton's not an MMT person either. You guys are confusing. Like, this is the thing that I see.
Monetary theory and other fantasies.
Yes.
MMT is just Let me because you're gonna call it fantasy. The United States has been operating under MMT since Nixon. Full stop.
Oh, I'm well aware of that. It was Nixon who took us off the gold standard. One of the worst things he did in office.
It was one of the best things he did in office. That and establishing the EPA. But
decoupling our dollar from anything real, so now we can fund every war in every fucking corner of the world now.
Because that is how currency has been throughout all time. Look up tribalism.
Currency
MMT
has actually usually been a gold standard throughout most time, and actually through our most prosperous time in American history was under the gold standard. So that's and actually our best time in United States history.
You're looking at things, trying to look at things in a vacuum. Because when I say the chartalism,
well, no, I'm saying that was our best economic period.
But it was also the discovery of oil, the discovery of the computer chip, the discovery of like all these technologies. It wasn't because of gold. Gold didn't do any of this. It was human innovation.
No, but that was the money that we had, and it was tied to something real.
The money.
We didn't have the same inflation problems that we do now.
No, we had massive deflation. We had massive deflation problems and bank runs,
but we haven't had the inflationary issues that we got post Nixon.
But the reason that we got the inflation after Nixon is because of the oil embargo and OPEC, because we're an oil-based economy. Had the OPEC not barred oil exports to the United States due to our support of Israel,
we would have gone into the Middle East a few decades early.
Say what?
So you're saying we would have gone into the Middle East a few decades early if we would have stuck to the gold standard?
No, if we would have, if we didn't support a Jewish state, we wouldn't have gotten the oil embargo. Regardless of if we had a gold standard or not, that inflation would have happened because it was because of an oil supply shock in the United States.
So now Cypher introduces the Israel knot to the story. Interesting.
I mean, that's just what happened. That's like, I'm not saying that it was one way or the other that we should or shouldn't have supported Israel. That was the consequences of doing so. The entire Middle East said, fuck the United States, you're not getting our oil. So they pulled out the oil, they set up the embargo, and we ended up having an oil supply shock because of it. Even though we were developing our own oil fields and stuff at a record price. It happened. It started under Nixon. I think it was under Ford, actually. So we'll say it started with Ford. Carter essentially inherited the oil embargo, the stagflation that happened in the 70s. He got a lot of the blame for it because he tried to fix it with Volcker. Volcker is doing what kind of Jerome Powell is doing with ramping up the interest rate, but not to the same degree. Knock on wood.
You guys are just rattling off presidents that didn't even need the biased media to fucking bury their legacy. They did that all on their own. That's amazing.
Yeah, like, now I actually used to do presidential birthday toasts to each president, and President Ford was, let's call him the placeholder president, because like what was funny is if you would have asked him, if you would have told him 18 months before he was sworn in, you're going to be the president of the United States, he would have looked at you like you're a crazy person. Like, what? Richard Nixon just won one of the most sweeping re-elections in U.S. history. You think I'm going to be president in 18 months? You're out of your fucking mind. And he just kind of
shorts out with bleach after he was sworn in. No.
You're probably right there, because he had like three martini lunches that Jimmy Carter would always talk about. Like, maybe we shouldn't be having somebody at the White House that has himself 3 martini lunches. Like, and I do got to say, like, as a farmer, I do understand how Jimmy Carter won the presidency. It was really easy. I'm just a simple peanut farmer from Georgia, and I'm going to go to D.C. and clean up that dirty town. And since then, you'll notice we've never elected a farmer to the executive ever again.
He had to sell his farm, too. Imagine if Trump had to sell anything that he owned to become president because of the conflict of interest. Yeah, okay.
Hey, he sold something. He sold himself. One night of passion to Stormy Daniels. He
sold himself.
$300,000.
Yeah, he made 300 on that. But.
Yeah,
the money that I paid her was for missing out on one of the greatest sexual awakenings of her lifetime. I never touched her, unless she says I'm a wildcat in bed, in which case it's all true.
I mean, that was a good Trump impression. I give you that.
Thank you. Like, here's the problem: if he runs in 2024, Ron DeSantis, I'm sorry, my opponent's gay. I walked in the door, I saw him, I said, wow, he's gay, and that's going to be it. It's like Ron DeSantis, like, damn it, how did he get me? And so, yeah, Trump, he's like,
I think Trump is toast, though. I'm not on the right, but I don't think he recovers from this entirely.
Well, let's entertain that. I tried to tease Phil with this in our private chat. Yeah. Out of all the Republicans that could run, and DeSantis being the most likely alternative, Trump, we know Trump can lose to Biden. That for a fact he can, and likely would again if it was another matchup.
Please nominate Trump again, for the love of God. I want to see it.
But
remember when John Oliver said that, though? Be careful what you wish for.
No, this is not the same kind of thing, because we've had fucking 2 years of slow trickle releases of every batshit insane thing he tried to do.
It's not even that. Most of the Trump base doesn't give a shit about that.
I know.
Most politically,
the January 6th hearing just kind of looks like a public therapy session to the right, to be honest.
Yeah, but I'm not worried about the right. The right wing is going to vote for whoever the fuck you guys nominate anyway, so I don't give a shit. Okay.
And it might be Trump, and he got 77 million votes. You might want to be worried.
It's the middle of the road suburban mom coming out of like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. They're going to determine an election when it's Trump versus somebody else again.
Just pissed her
and
off.
Roe just pissed them off. And Trump is, more things are coming out that Trump like did some fucked up shit. And they're going to be like, I don't know, guys. I don't think we should do this. Meanwhile, Daddy DeSantis is what you guys should be calling him, has came out and said, we're going to protect your right to educate the kids like you want. We're going to go on Fox News and tell everybody how to do this. We're going to do all this stuff. So they're going to be like, and you don't have that issue with Trump. You don't have that issue with Trump. Plus, not gay or anything, but DeSantis isn't bad to look at, and that's important for everybody.
Are you telling me that he's a more attractive-looking man than Donald Trump? Come on,
he must be. He must be a more natural tone
sexier
of
than Donald Trump. I don't know if I believe
that.
But no, I think
one other thing though. One other thing. Unlike Trump, DeSantis is not a fucking coward, and he actually went and served his country as a naval officer. So there you go.
My bone spurs served our country well. I don't know what you're talking about, Cypher.
I could just imagine him trying to barter a bargain. Like, look, I've got I'll trade you this for your grenade. It's only got 3 rounds left, but I think you're getting a really good deal. That's out of the deal. Come on. I wouldn't wanted him on the front fucking lines.
Nobody would have. But the point is that
cigarettes to get home. Yeah.
I don't think anything at this point is going to fucking hurt him any more than anything that's been said about him over the last 6 years. At this point, it would take an act of God or himself coming out and saying, look, everything they've said about me, it's 100% true. I've been lying through my teeth. And even fucking then, the most devout red hat wearing MAGA.
That's a Trump clone. That's not real. Q told me.
So, here's the thing. DeSantis is just getting started having the smear campaign. It's been teased. They have not drug him through the mud and drowned him multiple times over. Trump's been impeached twice, for Christ's sake. This guy's bulletproof at this point in terms of.
Let's make it 3, America. Come on, let's make it 3. Let me be the impeachment champion. 3rd time impeachment. But no, something to keep in mind, and kind of touching on what Cypher was saying. Ron DeSantis, in his mailers that he sends out, it should just be him in that white Navy uniform. That's it. Just a picture of him in that white Navy uniform. It's perfect. Now, Tony said something earlier today, which has kind of been sticking with me, which is interesting to because if it boils down to Biden versus Ron DeSantis, you've got Joe Biden, who, whether you love him or hate him, he's going to be viewed as fucking everything up come election day. And then you've got Ron DeSantis, young, handsome, vibrant, good-looking man who's seen as unambiguously leading his state well through the COVID pandemic.
That would remind me.
It's basically a layup.
That would remind me of JFK going up against Nixon if Nixon were another 40 years older when he went against JFK.
There's that, but what I'm getting at here is that is great. Like Tony said, Trump can win. He can very easily win. But he also is the only Republican major candidate that can lose.
Mm-hmm.
For DeSantis, it's almost a layup, which is why I'm a little skeptical at this point. Ron DeSantis is starting to look too perfect. What's going to come along in the next 18 months is just going to crash him, and we're never even going to talk about him ever again, because that's the way politics works. But
that's what I'm saying. At this point, Trump has already had all these things said about him. At this point, if they start opening the fucking closet on DeSantis, it's not the same. He doesn't have the cult following that Trump has. He's not as ingrained in the mind.
He doesn't need it. Trump can be... All right, I'm not going to say that, so never mind.
Have people vote for
oh, come on. You're amongst friends. It's just us here.
Nope.
It's just us here.
It's crowdsourced politics. That's where you can find it.
Yeah. So, what was I going to say? Oh, I think Ron DeSantis has been planning to run for president his entire life. That guy's going to come out as a Boy Scout.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That does remind me of, there was a politician here in Nebraska. Fuck it, I'm just going to say his name. His name was John Bruning, and he was the most transparently ambitious politician in Nebraska history. And I actually knew his aunt very well. Very nice lady. And she said he's wanted to be president since he was 6 years old. And so, yeah, when you're one of those types of folks, it's been in there. So you know what? You might be, because, John never touched a marijuana cigarette or was probably even in the same room as one. And that's how clean cut they were. And so I could see Ron being that level of clean cut, but nobody's got their shit really together. Wow,
Bobby, you're a big Biden bicycle fan, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was unfortunate. I didn't even give him too much shit on that one, because I know I myself.
Yeah.
Everybody gets their foot stuck on that stupid fucking pedal clamp. It's like the most important thing when you're actually seriously riding a bike, and it's the most annoying fucking thing when you're trying to get off the damn thing.
Look, I don't think I don't know that he should have been on the bike doing press anything type of public appearances or not, but Jesus Christ, that looks a hell of a lot more impressive than what Donald Trump telling us how many cheeseburgers he sucked down and how big a fan of the Big Mac he is. Like, come on.
Yes.
Like we make jokes about him being a dementia patient, but at least the guy's out there being active. I mean, well,
you can tell,
sure.
Trump golfed more than any other president. What are you talking about?
And he never walked any of the course.
Yeah, you could see though that Dr. Jill Biden.
I don't want to wear out these Donald Trump shoes.
Dr. Jill Biden's not an avid bike rider. If you watch that video and see where she veers off,
she damn near rams into him.
Yeah, well, yeah, that too. But yeah, like, yeah, this isn't a normal activity for her. Like this is obviously like an appearance.
Maybe she's the sleeper agent. Maybe she was being awoke and trying to take him out.
You know, I think I'm just going to go ahead and say bold statement here. I don't really care if the president can throw a pitch at a baseball game. You know, I know hard. Like that's a.
All right.
Are you still mad about Bush?
Bill's gone. I got rid of him. He's done. That was the most controversial thing he's ever said on this show.
Like, yeah, like
I'm still trying to get over when Bush Jr. tried it. Like,
I don't even. State of a pitch.
That was awful.
Well, I remember every president's had a really shit pitch other than like 3 of them because they're not athletes. They're politicians, for fuck's sake. So, like,
he sure as hell was not an athlete.
Did you remember the video of Obama working out and shit like that? These are not athletes, okay? Like,
that's not okay.
Hold on,
it's a weird standard to hold people to.
Did you guys watch Kamala sink the basket after 6 tries or something? You didn't see that? Everybody was making fun of that one too. It was awful.
No,
it's not worth watching. I wouldn't even make fun of her for it.
If she could just sink a speech without sounding like an AI, it's like Roe v. Wade is a decision from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is a court that has justices on. It's like, Jesus Christ. Like are you trying to do this for like the local civics class or something? Like, I don't
such
get
an
like
awful. Anyway, we started with AOC. It's been almost 40 minutes. We haven't even. Really
did you want to finish up AOC?
Yeah, let's. Here's the part I wanted to bring up with AOC. So this is a conversation with her and Colbert, of course. So here's what she says. She says, well, I think one of the things that we are seeing here is the Supreme Court is actively delegitimizing itself. The Supreme Court has the power. It's power is in whether its rulings are heeded and respected, and if so, how much and what to what extent. And when we have the framing of our government, the president, Congress, and the Supreme Court are supposed to be 3 co-equal branches. Co-equal, none with supremacy over the other. Then she goes on, and when any one of those branches overreaches its authority, it is the responsibility of the other 2 to check the overreach of that authority. The Supreme Court has engaged in overreaching of its authority, and that's when she called for, that's the end of it. Yep, that's when she goes into kind of her hyperbole there. The denying human rights. Overreach. Anyway, that was
the most basic thing possible.
Well, at this point, she understands to keep her messages very vague, so it appeals to the most
would
people.
Be good.
To me, AOC, she understands crowd psychology a lot better than she ever lets on. And she understands her movement a lot better than a lot of politicians in our modern day. So when she uses this kind of language,
so avenging pineapple, I agree that could be done, but I don't think it'd fix anything.
She is making
Cypher,
herself.
you had your hand up?
She is making herself look as appeasable as possible to everybody that's on the other side of the counter of her to get as many tips as possible. It's the same concept. That's what she's doing. That's what she's always done.
So kind of like what Trump does.
Yeah, kind of.
Absolutely.
It's been a while since Tim Pool said anything that I thought was worth re-mentioning on the show, but last night they were talking.
Tim Pool, the liberal.
Yeah. I'm a liberal, guys. Trust me.
I'm so liberal. Fuck Trump.
Yeah,
or fuck
right?
Biden. I mean,
so he made the comparison with AOC and the what was it? The Nigerian prince scammers. And when they send you that email, like they're in broken English and things are spelled wrong. And that's on purpose because most people are going to look at that and be like, oh, that's a scam. And they just move on. But then they know the people that will actually reply, call, or interact with them after that are going to be not so smart people, and it'll be a lot easier to scam them. So they're weeding out the crowd, if you will, and focusing on a certain type of people that they really want to talk to. And then when AOC comes out and does some of her later in this, I don't have the text pulled up, but she had also said something on this show about how Dred Scott was a direct defiance because the Supreme Court was filled with Confederates, and those Confederates held up Dred Scott or some shit like that to slow down Abraham Lincoln. And I'm like, that timeline doesn't work, first off. Like none of that happened. It didn't work in that order. And obviously there might have been Southern maybe sympathizers.
So avenging Pineapple, the number is just arbitrary. It doesn't really matter. I mean, that's going to be true for anybody that's new to politics and still learning. Yeah, that was just to get people on his side, though. That wasn't a serious thing. I mean, everybody lies. We're all talking about politics. It's all a game of things. No one cares about. No one cares. Let's not. It's anytime anybody ever mentions a thing about lying when it comes to a politician, it just means it's a lie that you didn't agree with. Okay. That's really what it is. No one actually gives a shit. It's like hypocrisy. No one actually gives a fuck about hypocrisy except some weird fucking libertarians. Okay. Like, no one gives a shit. Stop bringing it up. No one gives a shit. Stop bringing it up because it's not going to convince anybody for anything. What matters is like where people are going, the politics, etc. Well, it's gonna matter to them. Uh-oh. He froze. Sure. It's not because of the hypocrisy. I give you that one. Ah, fuck that. But I mean, we can. We can. Let's get a different voting system. Then it's necessary. That's not the voting system. We still had first past the post voting. We still had a single district member first past the post. That there's no reason to compromise when you have gerrymandering. Like fuck it. Like we need a whole overhaul. Yeah, anybody to. Yeah, no. Any. I believe it. It's also wrong. It doesn't do what anybody says it does. District has gerrymandering problems. Now you need. Yeah, yes, you're right about what that is, but that's not the closest we can get. The closest we can get is by by proportional voting. Because what you're basically saying. No proportion. No, that's not what you're letting me say. So what? No, please let me finish. So what you're wanting is it. I gotcha. I mean that's a problem between you and your wife. So. That's right. That's right. No, what I meant. But what I meant by that was if say okay, New York for instance, right? Roughly what 40% of people vote Republican, roughly, just give or take. That sound about right? Maybe a little less. Either way, every single. Okay, either way, those 30% of Republicans that vote, their vote doesn't mean shit. If you rewarded it based on proportion, then you would get 30% going to. See, I'm gonna have to get some water in a second. But then you have 30% going to the Republican candidate, and then 70% going to the Democratic candidate. You do that across all states. You don't have gerrymandering issues that you're bringing up with the districts, and then you get to a more proportional representation system. Not 1 day for voting. I won't do that one. But the ID requirements, I don't have a problem with, as long as they are free. I'll give you the voting one, the ID one. All right, I'll be right back.
Winston Churchill said, democracy is the worst system in all the world, except all the other ones. And that's kind of where our system is at right now. So to me, I think, also, to be frank, to be perfectly square with you, all of this, we need to reform the Electoral College, and we need to reform national elections. It really just kind of sounds like, is there a way that we can prevent Republicans from taking power? It just kind of sounds like, am I off on that, gentlemen?
No, that is what most of it is. But you know, when you I don't know, all the comparisons with talk of what democracy is or what it's better than or not as good as it. I just more and more I keep thinking of democracy. Just democracy is just tyranny of the majority. That's really all it is. So.
I just had to write something down as a note. I remembered an argument that I forgot earlier, but I'll get to that when we get back to our row thing. But so, Cypher, I don't know if you heard it, but like to be honest with you, I'm just gonna be perfectly square with you. From one righty to a lefty. Whenever us Republicans here, we need to reform the Electoral College, we need to reform this election, we need to reform the filibuster, we need to reform the Supreme Court. You know all we're really hearing? How is there a way that we can wrestle a little bit more power from Republicans, even if they want it fair and square?
Well, maybe you should stop. Maybe you should stop projecting and actually listen to what people are saying. Because people. Yeah. Do you want to know? Do you want to know why? Because people like me are finally old enough to actually speak. I vote. I'm also not that much younger than you are, or actually I might be older. Might be older. No, so what? We're the same age. We're the same age. I mean, you actually get invited on the Twitch panels. I'm not active enough for that to happen, and I've turned too many of them down due to people like last minute saying, "Hey, can you come?" I'm like, "No, dude, I have a life." Not anything against these people, but I need more than a day's notice. Yeah. Yeah. Right? Cool. Is that gonna get me banned from Twitch? Okay. Yep. I mean, we may as well.
There is one thing I wanted to.
This is Trump at a McDonald's kiosk.
Ketchup. Well, Phil, here's how you do that. Okay, you go suck Charles Koch's dick. All right, and then let him splooge in your face. And then you too can be a right-wing grifter, paid for by the police. Nah, you can probably look it up though. Yeah, I know the joke he's making, but fuck that. Yeah. Why did the lefty have to point out the joke? Do I know you people better than you people know you people? I mean, you're from the Midwest, so that might explain some of it. Ooh. Sure. Mm. Oh, I see what you're saying. I gotcha. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Be realistic. This is fucking stupid type of reaction that we've seen since Roe. We knew it was going to happen. We've known for 50 years it could likely happen. This is nothing new. Like our whole lives, we've been told, hey, yeah, Roe could get overturned. Like this could happen. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said it's probably going to get overturned someday because it's just not legit. Even she knew. So when I see the extreme silly outrage in the uneducated parts of it too, to where like all the
minutes for my reply.
all the major like protests that happen in states where you still have your right for an abortion, like not all of them, but a large majority. Like the worst ones I seen, Arizona, where they stormed the Capitol there, that was kind of ironic. And Los Angeles had some of the bigger riots. New York had some of the bigger protests, I guess. I'm going to refrain from calling them riots because none of these were anything that we had seen before. Sorry, but Yeah,
right. It doesn't mean anything bad.
I'll try not to be misogynistic, and I'm gonna hold that next line. But some people are not very good at writing.
We've had 2 people on this panel who have had to self-censor themselves before they said something that they were thinking. Isn't this world that we live in 2022 so fun?
Oh no, I just haven't drank enough, Phil. If I have a couple more in me, I'm not going to censor.
Let me be clear. My censor was because I didn't want to give away the plot. So.
Well, what, like, gonna try to break the filibuster, pack the court, or something like that?
No, it was giving you guys advice, and I decided against it.
Aw, Cypher. Oh, that's
cute.
Well, you know,
I'm sure it'd be applicable.
What advice could the King of Extreme ever possibly need other than look a little more handsome than you already do? Like, I mean, like that. So I understand what you're getting there, but like, now I'm curious, Cypher, since we're getting here, the left is not happy about this decision. Is that's a fair thing to say? They're not happy about this.
It's fair.
And I've heard all kinds of theories on how do we overturn this? How do we change this? How do we get there? And I've heard stuff like packing the court, which, oh boy, that's
I'm not even mad about those suggestions. I'm more mad of, they're taking rights away from us. I'm like, well, technically, no, the government already kind of was making a restriction that they didn't have any business, and now it's up to your vote in your state to, now you have more of a right. Like, yeah, you might have to jump through some more hoops, but technically, like, now it's the will of the people instead of a branch of the government.
aren't you guys against the tyranny of the majority?
I'm against the tyranny.
Or the tyranny of the minority?
This is what you want. This is what you want.
No, I'm a liberal. I want the majorities have the constraints of a liberal mindset. And I don't mean that from a like social perspective, but from a libertarian, I guess, classic liberal sense of constraining the rights of government from doing things by the will of the people that basically fuck people over. So
well, that's one of the reasons why republicanism is so popular and why so many people subscribe to that, because it's the rights of the minority or even the minority of one are still protected even from a majority. So
yeah, but most Republicans don't actually subscribe to that. So let's be real.
Well, I mean, we just had our Supreme Court rulings that stated like the Second Amendment right is for everybody. And so
yes, and then at the same time came up and said that states can actually get rid of any kind of can actually make any kind of damn it, my brain's not working right now. Restrictions that they would like on abortion. So don't give me that. Like, these are all post hoc justifications.
Well, no, it's because one's an enumerated right and one's an implied. And so Justice Thomas is basically coming up with the idea that implied rights are left to the states, which
and he's only doing that
like
because
but
he's only doing that because of post hoc justification, because in the Constitution, the 9th Amendment says that any right that is not enumerated by the Constitution should not be construed to mean that the right of the people should be infringed. So there are rights of the people that are retained, there are rights of the states that are retained, but no, the 9th Amendment says there are rights for the people and there are rights for states. These are two separate rights. These are two separate distinct entities, two separate legal framings in order to prevent states from taking away the rights of the people, and in order for the federal government taking away rights from the state. They're two separate things.
The enumerations in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So that's a pretty loose definition, however you want to look at it. But Clarence Thomas has said that means that it's left to the states now, and whether we like it or not,
that's because it's post hoc justification.
Well, no, don't get me wrong. I'm going to give you. There was a comedian that had a pretty good one. They just uploaded TikTok. It's like, well, Supreme Court said, nah, states, fuck you. You're not figuring out that gun shit. Fuck you. You're not touching the gun shit. But you states, you can figure out the abortion shit. You're all on your own.
See, that's my thing. I don't think it's. I don't understand how anybody could look at this from a state by state perspective and say every state is equal when it comes to gun rights, and then say, but not every state is equal when it comes to abortion rights. No,
well, every citizen is guaranteed a Second Amendment right.
Is still a different, and the reason we are the United States is because every state, every culture, every population within the confines of those different ridiculous invisible wall states as ridiculous as the concept is, it is a different type of culture, and it is different state by state by state by state.
Yeah,
and you can't say that it's different in the gun department versus the abortion department.
Well, sure, I
if you're
can,
going to make
because
one way,
the Bill of Rights, every single
citizen
is entitled to the rights within the Bill of Rights. States don't get to pick and choose which amendments of the Bill of Rights applies to their citizens or not. These are rights guaranteed to every American citizen. So in that regard, I think Clarence Thomas was absolutely correct in his Second Amendment ruling. Now, we can discuss whether we agree with his Roe ruling, but I think Clarence Thomas basically said shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed, and it includes all Americans, and states, you don't get to pick and choose what amendments of the bill, because really, if you can go there, then that would be just exactly like California or New York saying, we're going to ban these 200 words and phrases within our state. You cannot say them. You will be sanctioned by the state. But technically, your First Amendment right is still fully enforced, and you still have full First Amendment rights because technically you can still speak in the state of California.
So states can't pick and choose which laws they want to
enforce. Which amendments of the Bill of Rights, the enumerated rights. Yes.
Then why even give them the
anything that's not enumerated is left to the states, Steve. It's pretty like that's.
I'm just
that is the law of the land today.
I'm asking you because I didn't get to have this conversation with you guys the other day in the chat when you and Brenda were going off. I was in a car and I didn't want to bore my wife for 4 hours, which is literally how long this conversation went, and I got caught up about hour 3.
Was that it?
If you're going to give
you would have loved it. Brendan's a hardcore libertarian who opposed the Second Amendment decision from the right, and I was like, "Wow, well done." I got to give you that one. Like
I'm just saying, if you're gonna say the states can't pick and choose, then why even give them the right to begin with? Because you shouldn't be able to pick and choose when the states should have the rights and when they don't. Because it's
well, then it's not a Bill of Rights.
No.
Like sorry, but that's even the supremacy clause says each of these Bill of Rights, each amendment applies to all U.S. citizens. So even if we don't agree with it, that was solved post Civil War. Even pre Civil War,
you had all these laws are not.
You had the Privileges and Immunities Clause, which even did show that rights did extend to all citizens. So to me, I gotta say that the Second Amendment decision was right on, because states don't have the right to pick and choose which amendments apply to their citizens or not. Now, you can disagree with the Second Amendment decision on those grounds, but that's a different argument entirely. Now, Cypher, I wanted to ask you, you have expressed at least not maybe open support, but maybe toying with the idea of things like packing the courts.
Sure.
What do you think the likelihood, like, let's say 2024, Biden, by some miracle, holds on to the White House, and somehow, some way, the Democrats hold on to the Senate. I'm sorry, I couldn't even keep a straight face with that one. But let's say by some miracle, they do get those majorities. Do you think they're actually going to go so far as to actually factually pack the court in the name of things like Roe v. Wade, or do you think it's going to be a legislative, like, what do you think the biggest counter is? But mostly in the packing the court question, I bring that up because folks on the right are like, yeah, the union can't sustain that. The union will not survive.
Well, the union can't survive these. I don't think the union can survive some of these rulings that are going to come out, because what you essentially have here is that for the last 40 years, conservatives in general have not trusted the court. And now that the court has switched parties, because that's what's happened, they're supporting the court, and liberals are saying, no, the court is just political. Me, being the person I am, have always said the court is political, and we should ignore those arguments because that's just the reality of the situation, and we should constrain what the court can do or can't do, who can nominate who, how long a seat can be vacated before a nomination has to be done, etc. And also potentially implement everybody calls it a term limit. It's not a term limit. If it's one term, it's just a term, right? So implement some sort of time limit on a term, right? So that way you don't get these, like, you don't give the incentive to nominate a zealot that's 30 years old to the Supreme Court just so you can stay there for 60 years and like do whatever ruling that you want to do. And then it makes the court less partisan because you have more turnover. So less people are like, well, it's like this now, but in 10 years, we might get our shot. No, they're looking at an entire generation right now of not having a liberal court. And that's not tenable.
Well, we had a liberal court for an entire generation previously, and so it wasn't written in the stars that we will have a liberal court forever. The idea that we can't, the union can't survive there being a conservative court for a few years, I think is kind of extreme hyperbole, to be frank. Like, and here's another thing: this too shall pass. Everything shall pass. Like it's kind of weird. Like people are pretending that Clarence Thomas was just blessed with eternal life. And like, no, like God rest him. God bless his soul. I hope he lives a good, long life. I hope he serves another decade or two on the Supreme Court, but that's probably not going to happen. Let's be frank. And so,
oh no, he'll retire if a Republican wins again in the next term, and then they'll nominate another Republican to replace him. That's what's going to happen. That's how this is going to go down.
Yep.
Both sides.
But if Democrats stay in office for the foreseeable future, Clarence ain't fucking moving. He ain't going nowhere. He's gonna.
Sure.
And unfortunately, like if you're on the left, this rightward majority is probably not going anywhere for a little while here. Clarence Thomas
this is a thing that shouldn't happen.
Times, though.
This is a thing that just shouldn't happen. It doesn't matter who's in power. I'd be saying the same thing if liberals
make them
did.
Non-political. That's the whole idea.
No, that's the idea, but it's completely false. It makes them more political because the stakes are higher every time.
They don't have to run. They don't have to kiss up to anybody, and they don't have to ever worry about losing their power.
They are
completely removed from the political process.
No, they're not. They lobby for their own admissions to the court. They have people lobbying them and getting them into power. They have the politicians that are saying that we need these sort of justices on the court. And all this happens over time.
You're talking about the nomination process. But once they're on the court, they're on the court. There ain't shit nobody can do about that.
I'm with Lynn on this one. Like, before we even talk about the justices having a term limit, like,
this isn't Jesus a term Christ. Limit. This is a time limit.
That's what a time limit and a term limit.
Kind of a distinction without a difference.
That's completely splitting hairs.
It's a distinction that matters because if we had a
difference.
No, because a term implies that there can be multiple terms, right? So if we have a term limit on court justices, for example, right? If we have a time limit on how long you can serve in office, then that's not a term limit, right?
You just called it a term limit. I'm sorry. I gotta give you some shit. If we have term limit, God damn it, it's not term limit. Like, it was
I said if we have a time limit on justices.
So it's an argument about.
So either way, let's do it for Congress first. Whatever your definition.
So I would disagree with that, and I have my reasons for that. And they're sound reasons. Do you want unelected bureaucrats in the party? Do you want unelected bureaucrats that control the party to determine who does and does not run for office? Because that's what you're going to get. No, we don't have that now.
The Koch brothers and George Soros? Like, yeah.
The Koch brothers and George Soros don't determine who runs for office. They don't determine who runs for office. They help polish people. They help polish people to run for office, but they do not determine who that is. The voters still do.
True, Stephen.
Wait, lobbying is a part of the political process.
I had to suck up to our audience. It's the smartest audience in all creation.
It is. Most beautiful, well-informed audience.
But so, I'm curious. So you think packing the court is a viable option, or
no? So here's my determination of that. I think what would likely happen in the thing that you said or whatever. I'm not catching these. They're actually throwing me off. I'm sorry, guys. You're putting them up too often on the screen.
Sorry.
My brain can't handle it.
Yeah, once in a while they come in rapid fire. I try to get through it.
No, you can respond to that if you like.
John Roberts.
I'll respond to that after.
People are not subject to political whims.
So I'll respond to that after. No, so what I think was likely to happen is that they will basically might pass a law that says the Supreme Court doesn't have jurisdiction over this. It's called vacatement, something like that. But that's what I think might happen. But what I want to see happen is I want to see the threat of of court packing being used to constrain what Congress can and can't do as far as Supreme Court justices are concerned. There should never be another time where a single politician can be like, no, we're not going to even hear a nomination at this. No, they should always have to vote, and it should always be whenever a position becomes available. It shouldn't take more than 6 months to fill that position. And if it happens to be during an election year or right before an election, so be it. They can try to get it to go for like 3 months or so, hold it up or whatever, but not for a year plus. I also don't think that, I think that we need time limits on how long a justice is on the bench. That will tamp down on political issues, like I was saying earlier. I also think that you should also have, and then in that it should have rules for how you basically change the court's makeup to be fair. I think it's as simple as drawing the short straw. You retire judges every 4 to 6 years, and it's just whoever draws straws. Literally, just on TV, just draw straws. And those people, the people with, you go down the list, person with the shortest straw retires first in 6 years, and then so on and so forth.
Oh, I love that that form of selection. Can we do this with presidents, to where we get down to the 2 competitors and we just flip a fucking coin?
Well,
would it be any worse than we are now?
No,
not really.
Now, but that means Trump would have a 50% chance of winning.
Now, I wanted to offer a slight olive branch and a little bit of pushback to some of the things you're saying there. When it comes to the next time there is a Republican president and a Democratic Senate, and there is an opening in the Supreme Court nomination, turnabout's fair play. Democrats have every right to hold up the nominee for 280 days. Just turnabout's fair play. They have every right to do that, whether anybody likes it or not. But now, in terms of they should be voted on no matter what. This was actually a statistic given to us by Ted Cruz. So I'm going to do my best Ted Cruz impression, which is basically a Ben Shapiro impression slowed down significantly. But
that was good.
There has been within our United States history 29 instances where there was a Supreme Court vacancy during an election year. During those times, 19 instances were instances of the president and the Senate holding the same party. Of those 19 instances, 17 were ascended to the Supreme Court. And there was 10 instances where the president and the Senate did not share parties. And of those 10 instances, only 3 Supreme Court justices got confirmed. So basically what that tells us, if the president and the party don't share each other in an election year, basically don't count on getting your nominee
Then they should be forced to vote.
Well, no, that's what the Senate does. They advise and consent. And
but they didn't even do that.
Well, hang on. They didn't nominate somebody that was palatable to Senate Republicans. Merrick Garland was not moderate enough for Senate Republicans. That's what the Democrats, that is what you have to do when you have, well, looking at how he's behaved since then, I don't know about all that.
He's probably doing that because of what happened. Let's be real. Resentment, spite and resentment's a very strong
all the more reason to keep him from any level of power. If spite and resentment is in your heart and can overtake what you're able to do in government.
That's politics.
No, not necessarily. Spite and resentment just against not even your political opponents directly, but their supporters. That's pretty cringe. But what I am going to say is Obama probably could have gotten his nominee through if he had nominated somebody that was like, say, pro universal health care, but also very, very pro Second Amendment. Probably would have been able to get his nominee through. Well, probably would have been a lot closer to actually getting a vote and getting there than Merrick fucking Garland. And what we found is justifiably so, unfortunately. And that is the Senate's role, is advising consent. Like I said, when the turnabout's fair play and the shoe's on the other foot, the Democrats have every right to hold up the next Republican nominee for 280 days. That's just.
But this creates political tensions that just shouldn't exist. This has
been happening since Bork.
Yeah, so doesn't mean it's right. Like Bork was actually voted against, mind you.
Oh yeah, but there's a reason why it's called getting borked.
I know why, because he was honest about his rulings and his opinions, and he was going in there biased just like everybody else.
It was because he fired everybody that Nixon told him to. That's why they were going to make sure he wasn't.
Jesus Christ, I have gotten porn fucking ads on YouTube my entire time being on here. What the fuck? Anyways,
well, quit watching all that YouTube porn. Wait a minute, there's
they're coming up.
Click on any of those. Like just drop those in the private chat for me to check out later.
Tony will make sure that they're safe for consumption.
Yeah, I'll make sure they're safe to click on.
He's kind of like a taste tester in the medieval times to make sure it wasn't poison or something. So all right, court packing's pretty well out.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. I like I said, liberals are more of a process kind of thing. They're and they care about norms. I don't think a court packing is going to happen if they take back power, but you could see them vacate the abortion ruling by saying the Supreme Court doesn't have jurisdiction of this. But I mean, that would be the same thing that happened.
Really, like I even asked.
So
Nate, they come up with what case would that even look like?
So the reason that they would do that is because there's no trust in the Supreme Court right now to actually keep it as a political thing. What is likely going to happen is that these cases of trying to prevent women from going over to other states are going to trigger another Supreme Court case, and either that would be upheld, or they'll say, "Oh no, we were kind of incorrect. This is actually a life, liberty, happiness kind of situation here, and we're going to have to outlaw abortion across the entire country." There's no trust that they're not going to do that, so that's why they would say, "Hey, Supreme Court can't rule on this." Then pass it in federal law and make it to where it's a de facto kind of thing, and that will cause a different kind of constitutional crisis, but at least one that's a little more manageable.
Do we have any idea which states are actually the most likely to do something as fucking stupid and drastic as saying all abortion is illegal, no exceptions whatsoever?
26 of them, because every single state that is doing, because here's the thing. This is
how many of those states have some exception for rape, incest, or life of the mother?
It doesn't matter, because what they're doing,
all of them do. All of them
do. But this is
so abortion isn't banned in those states.
Okay,
sorry,
it's not legally banned in those states. It is de facto banned in those states, and the reason it's de facto banned in those states is because doctors are not willing to risk having their practices come after. The hospitals are not wanting to risk having money, because a lot of hospitals are profit-making entities and some of them are being owned by Wall Street. Some of them are just money-making machines, like they're in some sort of gigantic network and they're making millions and millions of dollars. They're not going to want to risk that. So even though that there is these instances of these exceptions being there, those exceptions exist mostly, and this is in my opinion here, mostly because they know that it will make people like, hey, you know what? I don't personally like abortion, but you shouldn't outlaw it. Oh, here's the things that I'm comfortable with. Okay, this isn't as bad as we're saying it is. And they're de facto making it illegal in those states because we already have, there's been two or three cases so far already that have came out that where a woman is being denied the abortion procedure to save her life because the doctor is talking to their lawyers and saying, hey, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this, because they're going to charge me with murder. Because what's the difference between a rape? What's the difference between a rape abortion and a non-rape abortion? A claim of rape. Are you going to be able to prove that?
It's second-hand account. Yeah.
Most rape kits, safe kits is what they're called. Most safe kits only show that unless there was a lot of trauma done, only show that sex happened.
Yeah, and most middle-aged white suburban housewives prefer to be choked a little bit, so those are pretty much out the fucking door. It's true. It's true. But I don't like giving it up to the point where we're going to say, okay, well, it's fine. You can abort it if you were raped, because then you are encouraging people to use claims of rape as a form of contraceptive. And if you're going to encourage that, then what the fuck was the point of this?
Well, I want to offer just a small bit of pushback, but also like a possible, like, you said something that like kind of sparked my mind as to how the liberals would get this going again. And it would be, like you said, somebody crossing state lines to try and get an abortion, and it ended up going to the court that way. Now, what would be really fascinating is if John Roberts is still the Supreme Court justice, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, that motherfucker always tries to split the difference so goddamn much. You know, he would allow a regime where it's legal for you to go across state lines and get an abortion, but illegal to do one in your own fucking state. You know, he would fucking hand down a half-measured decision to that fucking extent that would be like, I could see that actually fucking legitimately happening.
That's gross.
But now, another thing to your point, Cypher, is I was talking to Nate, and he said, like, yeah, if Thomas was the one that was able to write the majority opinion, but he was gone too far, so they let it be Alito. Thomas would have said, life begins at conception. All rights are immediately imbued upon the baby, upon immediate detection, and abortion is a crime and a murder. And so John Roberts actually did find a moderate path. This is not what liberals wanted, but fuck, it could have been a lot worse for the left.
Roberts didn't do that. It was Alito and Amy doing that, in my opinion. Or and was it
Roberts
Gordon
trying to lobby for a different outcome?
Yeah, he wanted to just uphold
just couldn't
because he cares about the legitimacy of the court, and this impacts the legitimacy of the court. It just does.
Well, I don't know. It's to the Constitution wonks. It's like, well, now they're finally in line with constitutional principles, and like, so again, this is what I mean when I say,
which is why they were
two different movies on the same screen.
So Cypher's right. And it wasn't just the Roe decision. So the Roe decision, probably hurt them more in the eyes of one political view and helped them in another. Right. Same thing with the guns. So it helps their legitimacy on one side, hurts on the other. It's still going to even out at the end of the day. So I mean, now lefties don't trust the Supreme Court as much as the righties do. Now all of a sudden, right-leaning people are like, well, shit, Supreme Court's not that bad after all. Like after years,
the divine right of justices.
Yeah, right. So it's just, it's I don't know. I haven't processed that yet, but it's, now that you mention it's really interesting because I don't think overall, like polling numbers, sure, I mean you'll get whatever CNN aggregate poll shows, whatever, blah blah blah. I still think you're gonna have a pretty much an even kill. It's just different people are thinking differently now.
No, I think because of how much cemented about it, I think right-wing people still don't trust. Hold on a second.
Oh no, that's perfectly fair. Sometimes you just gotta wet your whistle.
No, I'm eating corn chips, which is stupid when you're on a podcast. So I think a lot of people. Yeah, I think a lot of people on the right wing still don't trust the court. It's just that it's happening to go their way. So they're like, yes, this is why we need to maintain power as long as we can. So that it continues to go our way. I think what you've seen, though, is that liberals were like, hey, the court makes rulings that we don't agree with a lot of the times, but it's still legitimate because they still follow precedent when it's necessary. They don't take away rights. Now you're seeing them take away rights that liberals care about and also going after other rights. If Thomas had his way, we would see Obergefell overturned. We would see Casey overturned. We'd see all these things. We'd basically see the abolishment of the Warren era, the Warren Court era, which established that married people have the right to privacy and can do whatever the fuck they want when it comes to sex. That we had single people that weren't married could do the same thing. Gay people could do the same thing. These are all substantive equal protection cases that Thomas wants to overturn.
Yeah, that is the only thing I thought
was after the war. But
it
was based on the same principles.
Yeah, same principles and same. Yeah, no, I thought about that a couple days ago of like, hey, a lot of people are celebrating this, but they probably don't realize what's at stake here beyond that. And all the ones you mentioned, but I'm sure there's a shit ton of other ones that right wingers would be pretty pissed off if got included in the list. That certain right to privacy things that would affect them. There's probably more to it that we haven't looked into yet that could be quite dangerous for a lot of people.
I wanted to go back. Cypher, you said there's roughly 26, which is over 50% that would outright say abortions are illegal, verbatim, no exceptions. And
no, that's not what I said. Imagine. So what I said is that de facto we'll see and I did say 26. Let me correct that bit a little bit. It's anywhere between 20 and 26 that we'll see in a de facto position.
Super high.
There's already 13 right now, and 7 additional states are on their way to pass those same kind of laws that are triggered, which go back to the only exception being rape, sometimes being rape, sometimes being incest, and oftentimes being life of the mother. But because you can't make determinations that those are what's happening because a doctor can be like, yeah, the woman's life was in danger, you're going to have less people wanting to do abortions, which is why when the 6-week ban happened, you had all the abortion clinics in Texas closed down. When the 15-week abortion ban happened in Missouri, you had most of the abortion clinics closed down except one that was willing to take that risk. People are simply not willing to risk their livelihoods and their family's safety to do what many people believe is the right thing. And that's just the way it is.
I brought this up to Phil, and he pushed back immediately. I didn't have a source or anything, but I was watching like a TikTok or Instagram story, something along those lines. And like days after this came down, people reposting secondhand accounts of NICU nurses of, sure enough, the second this happens, 11:30 p.m., we have an ectopic pregnancy come in, and it took 9 fucking hours for the doctor to decide whether or not he could actually help this woman. She
was that the text message
out. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. Me and Phil
that was.
about it.
I think that was one of our
fake news.
Hey, regardless, I don't care. It doesn't matter. I don't care about the source. I'm telling you, it is still, regardless of how rare it is, this is still something that's going to probably fucking happen at some point. You're going to have instances
when it's a life viability issue. They wouldn't hesitate.
If the mother is going to die and the child is going to die, or just the child dies,
they're going to save the mother?
Are we really going to kill both? Because
those are the exception clauses in all of this. The doctor
That's what
knows.
I'm saying, though.
Like,
I don't think we're going to.
That's why I was like, that whole story is fake news. That's not real.
I don't think we're going to see anything close to 20 out of 50 states.
That's about as real as Trump grabbing a steering wheel.
That's what I'm saying, though. I don't think.
While
think
choking.
long term, maybe in the short term, we're going to see a lot of states go, well, we don't want to fucking rustle any of the red tape. Let's just go with it. It's illegal. Screw it, because that's what our constituency wants. I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to 20. I would guess
we
maybe
already have 13.
5. I don't think it's going to be
unfortunately,
that.
Tony Cypher's right.
13
quick. States had an immediate trigger law that upon Roe's being overturned, their abortion bans went into, which all of them, like, now I think South Dakota is actually, or maybe North Dakota, one of them is actually one of the most.
Was Kansas the first?
Where they only have an exception for the life
it had
of
to
the
be Kansas,
They don't even have exceptions for rape and incest, only for the life of the mother.
Yeah, South Dakota's like going to do, they're actually pushing legislation for all-out ban. I don't know what all is going to be included in that yet, but no, there was a actual protest here in Sioux Falls last night, out of nowhere, not organized at all. Everybody just showed up, and I mean, there's only a few hundred people, but it's only a town of 150,000.
God damn, we're just fucking doing a whole run down the Midwest here. We got Texas, Nebraska.
Well, it's all the Bible Belt.
It's the Bible Belt.
The Bible Belt plus the South.
Kansas has to be. Kansas had to be the first one on the list. It just fucking had to be. Tell me I'm wrong. It had to be. All
Kansas
the money
made sure ours was turned in first. We got in before Louisiana. They banned it at 11:02. We banned it at 11:01. Like, yeah, like,
that's the thing, though. I can't imagine a world where we're going to have states that are so damn just committed to this that they will not amend anything. But because we've been, how long has it been? How long was Roe v. Wade in effect? Was it how many years?
Almost 50 years, yeah.
Almost 50.
The 60s.
You're telling me? Okay, so you're telling me that over almost
73, wasn't it?
The states that wanted to see this overturned didn't have any idea what to do if that scenario actually happened. And if that scenario actually happened, they were just like, nope, yep, all abortion's illegal. We're not going to have any exceptions whatsoever. They were just going to let it ride.
Here's the other thing.
I think you're going to see, even in the short term, eventually within 2-3 years, even if it's that long, and I don't think it will be, I think you're going to see states implement a lot more exception. I don't think it's going to be rape because, like, Cypher was saying, it's just hearsay at that point because you're just basing it off of people having firsthand accounts, and you can't just trust that. And if we're talking about incest and rape, I think it's going to come down to whether or not can the mother and the child live. If only one can live, which is more important? If neither are going to live, whether you abort, then why shouldn't the mother get to live? You're telling me the mother and the child are both going to die if the abortion doesn't happen in those instances. Why does the mother need a death sentence at that point? That's completely counterproductive, and I can completely understand people lobbying for that.
Yeah, none of that's actually going to be an issue. They'll save the mother.
God, I hope not. I fucking hope not.
Here's the real shit of it. Democrats have nobody to blame but themselves. What was it? The women's, I'm trying to look it up here. I thought there was like a Women's Choice Act or something in 2021.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And then there was another abortion bill they tried to pass through to codify, but they went too far with it. They had too much extra shit in there, like everything else our politicians do, and the right does this just as much, where you put a whole bunch of shit in there that's unreasonable for the other side to actually, come together with.
It's a charade.
It's fucking annoying. And so fundraising. Virginia, was trying to do the up until birth. Like, people hear this shit and they go, well, fuck that. Like, that's what's going on.
Unfortunately, shit like that's kind of what got us here. Is the Democrats pushing too far, and to a lot of people,
but they
pushing for what's ostensibly infanticide.
They could have passed a codified version of Roe v. Wade over the last. What, you couldn't do it under Obama when he had a supermajority? Like,
because Democrats are.
He needed to force insurance on us instead.
No, let me say why. So the reason being that this couldn't pass under Democrats in 2008 is because at the time, about 30% of Democrats were still socially conservative.
Oh, that's right. They still didn't like the gays back then.
The super coalition between that brought Obama to power was a rejection of George W. Bush, and it still had a smattering of very socially conservative Democrats. So out of the 60-proof majority, they might have had 52 senators that would have been willing to pass a bill to legalize abortion. That's not enough to overcome a filibuster.
Okay, how about the last, just name anything in the last 6 years? If it was reasonable and didn't have
late term filibuster.
No, because they all included mid and late term abortions.
Because there are Republicans that exist who do not want abortion to happen, period, and they have power and they're in the Senate. So, and with the slim majorities that Democrats have had and slim majorities that Republicans have had, that filibuster prevents them from doing things like you're suggesting.
That's why you put them to a vote and put them on blast and make sure that if they're going to do the filibuster, make sure
the way that it changed in 2000.
You make them do it.
Yes, but the way the filibuster changed in 2006, it became just a filing of a memo so that they don't even have to stand and say anything. And so that was done because they're all old as fuck and because it gave them more power. I'm pretty sure McConnell saw this coming and he's like, yes, let's do this. It's going to help us in the long run. Because McConnell is actually a fucking political genius. But
I'm glad he's on my side. Jesus Christ. I can only imagine what it's like for y'all having to fucking deal with Mitch McConnell. But unfortunately, you're right. Congress is the world's most expensive nursing home as of this moment. And so, to make them stand, I understand that. But also, I made this argument. It was kind of funny. I was on with Bastiatos on Dylan's show, and they were like, the filibuster, it's it's the source of all of our woes. And they were like, you motherfucker. I was like, actually, the filibuster is super democratic because you have to build a coalition of even more senators that represent even more people than the slimmest majority of 51 senators. So actually, technically, it's actually a super democratic institution within our Senate. So they were not happy about that.
It's pretty conservative, but I get what you're saying.
But also, it's I've heard things we were talking about the Electoral College earlier. It's well, this is anti-democratic, or that's anti-democratic, or this thing's anti-democratic. Constitutions are anti-democratic.
Yeah,
it's what rights the minorities have against the whims of the majority. So, but just the fact that it's anti-democratic doesn't make it and just bad in and of itself.
But most people that are saying anti-democratic, they're talking about classical liberal democracies. They're talking about constitutional systems. They're talking about minority rights. When they say this is anti-democratic, they're meaning that it is not only is it impacting the will of the majority, but it's also giving the minority too much power in a sense and taking away their ability to pass laws. So,
well, again, so you're saying that there's these levers in place to prevent 51% from standing on the neck
filibuster
of 49%. That's a pretty good thing.
The filibuster is an accident. It wasn't intentional either.
My daughter was dancing. It was a silly dance.
It's all good.
I had to laugh. But that's something I keep in mind, is that you need to build an actual coalition. And this is something that I always say to people, because guess what? As a right winger, I've been frustrated. I think the NFA needs to be overturned. I think we need to get rid of the Hughes Amendment. We need to get rid of the 1960s Gun Control Act. We need to do all these things. And you should be able to buy a battleship in Walmart tomorrow. Okay? That's you. If you're wondering how pro Second Amendment I am, there you go. But guess what? I can't get 60 senators together to do that. So maybe it's not as important to the American people as I would like to think it is. And so to all these bills that are on the left of things that you would like to get pushed through, maybe it's not as important to the American people as a lot of y'all would like to think it is. And so that's, if you can't pass the 60 vote threshold in the Senate, maybe there's a reason for that.
The reason being is that we don't have.
It's not important to enough people.
No, it's important to enough people. Those people just don't happen to live in the states that has the advantage here.
We got
which
COVID
is also another
right
problem.
Through, no problem. We get stimmy money through, no problem.
Those only require 50 votes. They only require 50 votes. Anything that does with a budget, anything that has to deal with the budget, only requires a simple majority to pass through budget reconciliation. And those things were part of the Byrd rule, and the Byrd rule is fuck whatever the fuck it is, right? I'm not going to get into it. But those don't require 60 votes to make it through. So that actually benefits Republicans in that regard as well. It also benefits some Democrats with some spending priorities, but it depends on how those spending priorities work. So.
Not to mention how many bills don't even make it to the floor because the leadership is.
They can't get out of committee. The leadership does it. Yeah.
My daughter just showed me a TikTok of basically the Supreme Court justices getting roasted. And like one of them is like, they're leaking like Neil Gorsuch's credit card information and shit like that. It's like, God damn, they are going scorched earth on this. What's that, kiddo? Yeah, and actresses. But yeah, so it's been a scorched earth one on this one. So I just thought that was funny. It's like, that's where we're getting now. They're releasing credit card data and home addresses. And I think that's a bit much. Let's be frank. That's a bit much.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Should we end on the funny story that captivated everybody for about 12 hours until we found out the most important part of the story is probably bunk.
All right.
One last question. One last question I got for Cypher. How much do you like? Oh, okay. Now I remember. Sterdiasis was one of the reasons that was given why this shouldn't be overturned. And to me, like that was something that like the Piscos and the Destinies of the world were saying we shouldn't overturn this because of sterdiasis. But we even mentioned the Dred Scott decision earlier tonight. Like the Supreme Court saying it is and shall be doesn't mean that it should always be. And so I'm actually, and you know what? I have no problem.
It's a bad argument.
If the court switches and they want to restore abortion or what have you, elections have consequences. Like that's, and so if you don't like what's going on in the Supreme Court, folks, vote.
Yeah, but vote. Too bad voting won't matter for 30 years.
Well, Republicans played a long game, and we grinned and bared it and went through it. So sorry, Democrats, you're going to have to do the same. You're going to have to play a 30-year long game like Republicans did.
Yeah.
Welcome to it.
No. I push back. Voting matters more now at your local level than ever. If you're in a state where you want abortion to be legal and it's currently not, then you better organize, vote, and make your voices heard. Like now, power is in the people's hands now.
Have a chance.
Whether they want it or not, the power is in the people's hands, and they need to do something about it.
But there are some rights that shouldn't be infringed upon, regardless, and that's where liberal constitutional democracies
Second
come
Amendment,
from.
fucking right.
Woo! I'm sorry.
I can quibble with it, but I don't necessarily disagree with the Supreme Court's decision. I just think it was bullshit. So the reasoning given behind it is bullshit because I don't trust them.
Gotcha.
Guns are awesome, though. So that's my response and my reply to you. Yeah. Well, guns are fucking sweet. Woo! Oh, sorry.
Jesus, Phil.
So with that, chicken.
Final story.
Hit it.
The former Meadows aide, we all heard this story. Trump lunged at Secret Service agent, tried to grab the steering wheel on January 6th, which was the only headline anybody heard. Then I hear about all the other
media.
I know, right? This is the most sensational headline of the year, if it's true, which it probably isn't. It
stabbed 5 people. Like,
Yeah.
tried to ride off on a fucking a razor. Yeah.
He punched
The
some
memes
black
are
kid.
primo though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The memes from all side over the last week have just been A+, regardless of what. Like the memes, have just been, wow.
Exactly.
He was aiming
Steven.
for the driver's pussy.
He's trying to grab the driver's pussy. I'm gonna grab it.
I wasn't trying to grab
problem,
the steering wheel. I was going for the pussy.
Now, I didn't know that Trump was Goro from Mortal Kombat, because he's grabbing this guy's neck and grabbing the steering wheel at the same time, which, now, again, this is one of the things I always say whenever you're looking at the potential for fake news. If the story is a little too on the nose, it's probably fake news. It's like kind of like I hate to derail, but a couple months ago when there was that story of the transgendered person raping somebody in the bathroom. Like, okay, this is a little too on the nose. And then you got into, there was a lot of weeds in that story. Now, granted, there was a rapist and that person should be in prison forever, but that was a really weird story. And so that's one of those things where like this, if it's just a little too on the nose, like this one, Trump trying to grab the wheel and strangle, it's a little too on the nose. To me, I view that as silliness.
I feel bad for this girl. One, she's not going to be brought back into the political fold. Definitely not on the right anytime soon.
Oh no, she realized she was fucked.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
You saw it on her face.
She's only 26 years old. Oh yeah, she's 26 years old.
You betrayed the Don. You're out.
Well, yeah, God, and
maybe she can get a fucking job doing the goddamn.
She'll get to write a book. I mean,
she'll be an MSNBC contributor in no time. Don't worry about it.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
No, I don't think so, but that's fine.
But like, there were some things in here that people were like, well, even if he didn't grab the steering wheel, like he still threw a plate up against the wall. Be like, well, dude, he just lost. Yeah. Like his crazy unhinged thoughts weren't going the way he thought they were. So, he got mad and threw a plate up against the wall. Like, shit happens.
Ketchup.
That's also a secondhand story of secondhand information, but also here's the thing to keep in mind.
But that one I could believe.
I have no doubt in my mind that at that moment, Trump thought he had won and had been screwed over. Whether that's true or not, no evidence for that. No court has ever evidenced that in any way. Let me just say that right now.
How dare you even insinuate that something like that would happen? Don't even fucking say that, Bill.
But what I'm saying is, I could see in like any one of us here, if we're the sitting president of the United States and we think we got this shit in the bag, and then shit starts going haywire, and you think that it's being taken from you, yeah, you might throw something at the fucking wall.
No,
like that's I think that's that we actually. I'm gonna give a total, like, if Biden were to lose re-election and we find out he threw his scoop of ice cream up against the wall. Okay, like I'm gonna give him that.
Well, he probably
he loses.
Yeah, is this for Senate or president?
For president. Yeah. If he loses for president, does he know? No, he will not be aware of the results one way or another. No, he will he's a great figurehead though, because the powers that be just have their perfect puppet.
Losing. Okay, Trump anticipated losing, and he even told us 6 months
probably the first time
he was going to get screwed over. So he was wrong then. He's always going to be wrong, and he called his shot like Babe Ruth, but losing. So good for him. Let's move the fuck on, Phil. Get over it.
Yeah, get over it. How bad does Liz Cheney look after all this? Because not only has she turned on most of the party.
With no island.
When did Liz Cheney look good? Let me ask that. When was the last time she looked good?
Hold on, Tony. I got 3 things here. So, okay, she betrays her party. Basically betrays her party.
Well, that's a Cheney thing to do. Yeah.
And she's Dick Cheney's daughter. That's the second thing. So that's not going for you. And the third is, remember when she promised she wouldn't grab campaign funds or really go after Democrats to secure election? Oh, she's campaigning to Democrats in Wyoming to secure her reelection now. She put out mailers to everybody, Democratic Party in Wyoming.
Well, I mean, then you're on my side. You should be against open primaries.
Yeah, I am against open primaries. I think those are bunk. But anyway, how bad does Liz Cheney look today? Like, who likes Liz
Very
Cheney?
bad.
Basic liberals.
Yeah.
I was about to say, if like Mitt
How can they
Romney
swallow
is
that with
your
who her dad
candidate,
is?
Liz Cheney is just, yeah. Like
I'm all
if
give
milk
her some
toast Mitt
tips.
Romney is somebody you're supporting, then yeah, Liz. But yeah, Liz Cheney, she is now a woman with no nation. The Republicans don't want her. The Democrats don't want her. She just as well do the independent Bernie Sanders style and just, fuck it, I'm independent, and then she can have that.
And once again, ask you for your contributions.
But what's funny is my dad got a letter from Liz Cheney saying, "Will you please send me money?" But there was no like indication that this, like, Liz Cheney was the tiniest little lettering that you could find there, and it's like, this is going to Liz. Like, she didn't have her picture. She was just like, "Hey, Republicans, will you donate to me? I'm a Republican too." And like, she's like, "Wait a minute, Liz Cheney, she's the one who fucking betrayed Trump. What the fuck?" And I'm like, yeah, so.
Oh, good
yeah,
God. I'm more of a Republican than Liz Cheney at this point.
And you're not even a registered Republican. Jesus.
Fuck no. Why would I be? You guys are losers.
Because you don't like having any voice in your state primaries. That's why.
Hey, I'm just saying you guys lost the last election, Phil.
He's got you there.
Yeah. Suck it.
Well,
we've seen how you reacted. Jeez.
Yeah, we've seen how you react, asshole.
No, TikTok goes the clock. The fucking midterms are about to come, and I'm sorry, all the Supreme Court decisions in the world aren't going to mean nothing in the face of rising food, gas,
disagree,
housing prices. All right, like this is probably going to be a Republican rout this particular time around, and
it won't be as big as you think it is.
As long as they can keep Roe in the news up until November. Yeah,
honestly,
that's the only
Cypher,
thing they got to slow.
All we need is one more senator. That's all we really need on the right, and we can rope a dope Biden for the next 2 years. It doesn't matter because if there's any opening, you're going to have Mitch McConnell going, "Well, now we can't nominate a Supreme Court justice a mere 2 years before a presidential election."
That's exactly what's going to happen. So,
like, like
I fucking love that.
Like, yeah, like,
like
that's what pissed him off so much about Breyer retiring. Like, damn it, I was gonna change Breyer. Oh, that was gonna be great. Like, because there was a guy that was on the Heritage Foundation's list. I think his name was like Hartman or something like that.
Was he the 30-year-old?
Probably, I don't know. But he was basically the most Second Amendment, like the heaviest Second Amendment advocate. And so I was like, okay, that's the guy that I want. And then when Amy Coney Barrett got the nomination, I was a bit disappointed because I've been pushing for this Hartman, like I forget, it's either Hartman or Hardiman or something like that. And he was the one that I wanted. So that's probably who would have gotten Breyer's seat if Mitch would have been able to hang on to one more vote. But, hey, turnabout's fair play, and that's the way that the game is played. So Biden, to his credit, didn't pack the court. And also, he said he was going to nominate a black woman to his first Supreme Court seat, and he did. So, broken watch is still right twice a day. I'm going to give him that one. He still held through on his promise. Now, Ketanji Brown, we'll see what she's going to be as a justice yet. She hasn't made a single decision, so I'm not going to hold any harsh decisions or harsh judgments on her until she actually starts writing some decisions, some opinions.
She's a liberal originalist.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get along like oil and water.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Any other final words on anything tonight? We can start wrapping it up and outro in this.
Go around the room.
All right, Cypher.
As the guest, we'll let you start, sir.
Yes.
Sure.
Let us know where folks can find you. Appreciate you jumping on.
And any closing statements you got.
Sure. Thanks, guys. Thanks for inviting me on. This was a good amount of fun. I know we don't agree on a lot of stuff, but it was still good to have these kind of conversations. And that is what I try to do at Crowdsource Politics. It's not respectability politics. It's being civil, but still pushing back in a good manner. So you can catch me live every Thursday from roughly 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to roughly 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the News Roundup, where we cover the news that was for the last week with kind of analysis only the crowd can provide. You can find us on YouTube and Twitch under Crowdsource Politics and wherever you get your podcast for podcast streaming purposes. So again, everybody, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hey, again, thanks for joining. It's not very often. We used to have, Tom would come on every now and then. We had Hans come on a few times until Phil pissed him off.
About the Supreme Court, strangely enough.
Strangely enough, yes.
It was all over Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Amy Coney Barrett, and after that,
it was a shouting match. That was pretty.
It was pretty fun. Yeah, but it was basically when we didn't know whether Coney Barrett was actually going to make it to the Supreme Court, and it was, are the Republicans going to push this through? So hard to believe that somebody on the left and somebody on the right couldn't quite come to terms on that. I know, hard to believe.
So I don't know. It was refreshing that there weren't any bad faith platitudes and silly stuff going on like I'm used to whenever we have somebody with political disagreements. So you were a breath of fresh air, Cypher. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
That was good. Well, definitely try to have you back on sometime. I'm almost out of beer. So, folks, thanks for tuning in. As always, appreciate you. Love you. Bye. I got to go grab another beer. Phil, Tony, you guys know what the deal. I'll be right
Phil,
back to hit the outro button.
Phil, go ahead.
Well, folks, it is episode 145, Road Derangement Syndrome. And as I'm known to say around here, all that being said, thank you for joining us here at the Big Buckin' Empire, folks, on YouTube and Facebook. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, send this to friends. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, folks. Big Buckin' Empire. It is the place to be for you and the place to be for me. And folks, I am the devilishly handsome outlaw himself, your king of extreme, Phil KOE, the man of the hour, the man of the power, the man that makes the other podcast cower, the prince and potentate of the political parlance, the lord of the Scottish Highlands, and one damn handsome man if I do say so myself. You can find me at KOE Nation on YouTube, KOE Nation on Twitch, KOE Nation on TikTok. That's K as in king, O as in oh my god. You can find KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitch. E is in extremely happy to know you can find KOE Nation on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitch, folks. This is the place to be for all of your KOE content. And folks, we also need to send a very special shout out to Cypher. Cypher, you are a man. You are as good as Mekhi Phifer. You are as entertaining as Rowdy Piper, the one, the only motherfucking Cypher, which you can find at Crowdsourced Politics on YouTube and Twitch, folks. And folks, I will say, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Raise a glass to yourselves, and I hope every last one of you makes it back to the Big Buckin' Empire. Happy, healthy, much the wiser. Tony, Chicken, take it away.
I don't have a whole hell of a lot to add to that. I just wanted to say I haven't been on the Three Amigo show of the Dog and Chicken show with Phil and Chicken consecutively for like 5 weeks, and this was much needed. We have not been able to do our three-way show for a long time, so this was wonderful. I just realized something tonight though. If you've ever listened to like podcasts on Spotify or Apple or whatever the fuck, you speed it up to 1.2. That's basically what it's like listening to Phil's intros or outros. Like he's got it down so goddamn just perfect that if you speed the speed up of the podcast just a little bit, that's Phil to a T. That's a compliment, Phil, I promise. I promise, Phil.
Oh, okay.
You're very good at it. You're good at it. That's all I'm saying.
He's blushing.
Yes, I'm blushing. No,
anyway,
not that I'm sweating from yelling.
Yeah, no, that's not it. I do have a cold, so I didn't get as animated as I wanted to. I drank plenty of whiskey tonight, but I do want to say, last but not anybody who's like championing the Roe v. Wade thing, like at this point, I'm looking across my social media platform. I understand why people are upset, and I understand why people are spiking the football. And I'm looking at those states that are going to be doing this very nonchalantly and going across the board. Everything's illegal. And it does make me a little sick because as soon as you get government involved in what you can and cannot do with your body, it is pretty fucking gross. But at the same time, I'm a father of 4, so I can understand both sides of this. But yeah, don't go overboard with it. That's my thing. Don't make this redundant. Don't make it for nothing, because if you're killing one life to save none, what was the point? What was the point? And that goes for most things. So that's my thing. Look, I'm just Tony G. You can find me at Tony the Rod 2.0 on TikTok. You can find me here, Big Buckin' Empire, the Dog and Chicken Show, Thursdays or Fridays, whenever the hell we're doing it, whatever season it is. And you can find me right back here at Revolutionary Wrestling Podcast, the Money in the Bank pay-per-view this weekend. Bet you guys didn't even know that was happening. Your interim champ defending 13 times. Take it away.
I'll be taking that belt back. No, yeah.
Oh, don't fucking even.
Stop the steal. No, I love how the normal is like, oh man, I hope the whole world just comes together. I understand both points of view, and hopefully nobody goes too far. Everybody's going to go too far.
Sorry, I took the human aspect.
Ban everything.
Sorry, I tried
Democrat
to
states are
appeal
going
to
to just
people.
start chopping babies' heads off when they come out.
Let's do it.
Yeah, God forbid we appeal to the human nature. Yeah.
All right. That's it. We'll see y'all next week.
Shit.
Post show link scrolling down below. Linktree, Big Buckin. You know where to go, folks. We'll see you over there. Have a great night. As always, appreciate it. Love you. Bye.
And see if it just smooths itself out.
Back, tell you what I'll do. If I ever get back, I promise to refabricate you.
All right, everybody, that was the Big Bucking Empire, and I was on there as a guest, clearly. So if you want to see me do more of those kind of things, let me know, all right? But I'm out for the night. Y'all have a good night. As we say at Crowdsource Politics, keep your head up through the political storm.